Picture a sprawling city carved into a mountainside, its grand staircases adorned with intricate reliefs of ancient processions, its towering columns reaching for the heavens long after their roofs have crumbled to dust. This is Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of an empire that once stretched from the banks of the Nile to the shores of the Indus River, ruling over nearly half of the world's known population at its peak. The Persian Empire wasn't just another ancient civilization. It was history's first superpower, a breathtaking tapestry of cultures, innovations, and ambitions that shaped the course of human history in ways we're still uncovering today. Yet for all its grandeur and influence, this colossal empire guards its deepest secrets with an almost mystical determination. Behind those magnificent stone walls and beneath those sun-baked plains lie mysteries that have baffled historians, archaeologists, and treasure hunters for centuries. How did the Persians manage such a vast, diverse empire without modern technology? What incredible knowledge might have been lost when Alexander's army burned the great library at Persepolis? And what truly happened to some of the empire's most legendary figures and treasures that vanished without a trace? Today, we're embarking on an extraordinary journey through time to uncover 25 of the most captivating unsolved mysteries of the Persian Empire. We'll explore vanished armies that disappeared into the desert sands, decode ancient inscriptions that still defy translation, and follow the trails of legendary treasures that have tempted explorers for millennia. This isn't just a history lesson, it's a detective story spanning 2,500 years, filled with clues, dead ends, and breathtaking possibilities. So join me as we peel back the layers of time to reveal the secrets that the world's first superpower never intended to give up. Our journey into the shadows of history begins with one of the most enduring and massive military mysteries of the ancient world: the complete and utter vanishing of an entire Persian army. In the year 524 BCE, the mighty Persian Emperor Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, sent 50,000 of his finest soldiers on a mission across the unforgiving Egyptian desert. Their target was the Oracle of Siwa, a revered spiritual center that had apparently insulted the emperor. The army was last seen approaching a small oasis before embarking on the most perilous leg of their journey. And then they were simply gone. Not a single soldier, not a piece of equipment, not a single whisper of their fate ever reached the empire again. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus, our primary source for this tale, recorded that a monstrous rising sandstorm, a Hamzan, swallowed the entire force whole, burying the 50,000 men beneath countless tons of sand without a trace. For centuries, this story was dismissed by many scholars as a fantastic legend, a cautionary tale from Herodotus, who was sometimes known to exaggerate. How could an entire army, a force that would rival the population of a major city, just disappear? But the scale of the story and its persistence across millennia have demanded a second look. The desert is a perfect preserver and a perfect hiding place. It gives nothing back. The sheer, unimaginable volume of shifting sand dunes could indeed conceal a lost civilization, let alone a single army. This wasn't just a lost patrol, it was a significant percentage of Cambyses' military might, erased from existence in what might have been a single, cataclysmic weather event. The hunt for the lost army has become the holy grail for modern archaeologists and explorers, driven by the tantalizing possibility that an entire Bronze Age military encampment could be found frozen in time, perfectly preserved by the dry desert air. Expeditions have scoured the potential routes for decades. In the 1990s, a team led by renowned geologist Tom Brown claimed to have found ancient Persian arrowheads and a dagger, though these finds were met with skepticism. The real breakthrough seemed to come from two daring Italian archaeologists, Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione. After years of research, they announced in the 2000s that they had found a mass grave and bronze weapons in the Sahara, suggesting they had finally located the remains of Cambyses' soldiers. Their evidence included what they described as a mass grave with hundreds of bleached bones and fragments of ceramic pottery. Even more compelling are the modern technologies being brought to bear on this ancient puzzle. Ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery have scanned vast swaths of the Western Desert, searching for unnatural metallic signatures or structures hidden beneath the sand. One recent survey hinted at the possibility of a large, man-made formation deep under a dune field, a discovery that could rewrite history books, yet the mystery endures. The desert guards its secrets jealously. Each potential discovery raises more questions than answers. Were the Italians correct, or did they find a different tragedy? Did the soldiers perish together in one horrific storm, or did they become disoriented and perish of thirst in smaller groups, their remains scattered across hundreds of miles of barren wilderness? The Lost Army of Cambyses remains one of history's greatest ghost stories, a stark reminder that even the most powerful empires were no match for the raw, untamed power of nature. But what if one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world wasn't actually where everyone thought it was? From a lost army, we turn to a lost garden, a place of such breathtaking beauty that its very existence has been questioned for centuries. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are legendary, immortalized by Greek historians as a terraced paradise of lush vegetation and ingenious irrigation, a gift from the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar to his homesick Median wife. For generations, this was the accepted story, yet a profound mystery has taken root in modern archaeology. Despite extensive excavations at the site of ancient Babylon, not a single shred of definitive physical evidence for the gardens has ever been found. There are no foundations for towering terraces, no remnants of the complex water screws needed to lift water from the Euphrates River to such a great height, and perhaps most damningly, no mention of them in any contemporary Babylonian record. This complete absence of proof has led many scholars to propose a radical and fascinating theory: that the Greeks, including historians like Herodotus, simply got the location wrong. The wonder they described wasn't in Babylon at all, but was actually a magnificent achievement of the Persian Empire. One compelling candidate is the Assyrian capital of Nineveh. The formidable king Sennacherib, who ruled centuries before Nebuchadnezzar, left behind extensive inscriptions describing a monumental palace and a wonder for all peoples. He boasted of an unparalleled garden complex, complete with a sprawling irrigation system that used a vast network of canals and an early prototype of the Archimedes screw to bring water from mountains over 50 miles away. These detailed accounts, etched in stone, describe a site that matches the later Greek descriptions of the Hanging Gardens' almost perfectly vibrant flora from across the empire, growing on elevated terraces visible from great distances. Another, even more intriguing possibility places this botanical marvel at the very heart of the Persian Empire, Persepolis. Imagine the scene as foreign ambassadors journeyed to the ceremonial capital to pay tribute to the King of Kings. Their path along the grand stairway would have offered a stunning view of the entire terrace complex. Could the lush royal gardens of Persepolis, with its sophisticated Qanat underground water system capable of sustaining vast plantations in the arid landscape, have been so awe-inspiring that visitors returned to Greece and spread tales of a hanging garden, their stories gradually becoming conflated with the more famous city of Babylon over time? The Persians were master hydrologists and engineers, creating earthly paradises known as paradisa, the origin of our word paradise. These enclosed, cultivated gardens were central to their culture and demonstrated their divine-given right to tame nature itself. So we are left with a captivating historical detective story. Was one of the world's most famous wonders a case of mistaken identity? Did the gardens exist but under a different ruler in a different empire, their true origin obscured by time and the haze of legend? Or is the lack of evidence proof that the Hanging Gardens were merely an elaborate and beautiful myth, a traveler's tale that grew in the telling, a symbol of an idealized, exotic East that never truly existed? The search for answers continues to drive archaeologists, who now use satellite imagery and soil analysis to hunt for traces of unusual plant life or irrigation patterns around Nineveh and other Persian sites. The mystery of the Hanging Gardens challenges not just what we know about ancient history, but how we know it, reminding us that sometimes the stories we think are set in stone are still waiting to be unearthed. Moving from legendary gardens to a tangible yet equally debated artifact, we encounter an object that bridges the gap between propaganda and principle. Discovered in the ruins of Babylon in 1879, the Cyrus Cylinder is a humble, barrel-shaped piece of baked clay, inscribed with Akkadian cuneiform script. It has been celebrated around the world as the first charter of human rights, a revolutionary declaration by the Persian Emperor Cyrus the Great after his conquest of Babylon in 539 BCE. The text describes Cyrus restoring displaced peoples to their homelands and allowing them to worship their own gods, a stark contrast to the brutal methods of other ancient conquerors. This narrative of tolerance and enlightenment is so powerful that a replica of the cylinder now sits at the United Nations headquarters. But this is where our third mystery unfolds. Was this object truly a groundbreaking declaration of human freedom, or was it something far more pragmatic? Many historians argue that the cylinder is not a standalone manifesto but a fairly conventional melamu or foundation deposit. In the ancient Mesopotamian tradition, rulers would place such inscriptions in the foundations of buildings to commemorate their construction and to inform the gods of their pious deeds. The text on the Cyrus Cylinder closely follows this formula, praising the Babylonian god Marduk and detailing Cyrus's restoration of the city's walls and temples. In this light, its primary purpose was not to announce new human rights to the world, but to legitimize Cyrus's rule to the powerful Babylonian priestly class, ensuring a smooth and stable transition of power by presenting himself as a chosen, benevolent ruler rather than a foreign oppressor. This interpretation is bolstered by the discovery of other similar texts. An earlier Babylonian tablet from the reign of King Nabonidus, the very ruler Cyrus defeated, shows that the act of returning statues of gods and freeing captured populations was a standard royal practice, a trope used to establish a new king's legitimacy. Cyrus was arguably being a savvy politician, using a familiar local tradition to secure his hold on a valuable new territory. Yet, even if it was formulaic, the scale and sincerity of his actions seem to have been unprecedented. The Jewish people, for instance, were indeed allowed to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, an event documented in the Old Testament's book of Ezra. So was the cylinder merely clever propaganda, or did it reflect a genuine and innovative imperial policy of tolerance that held the vast, multicultural Persian Empire together for centuries? The mystery deepens when we examine the cylinder itself. The text is incomplete, the clay is broken, and there are missing fragments. What was on those missing pieces? Could they have contained even more revolutionary ideas, or perhaps context that would shift our understanding entirely? Furthermore, the cylinder's symbols are enigmatic. It depicts a unique, almost syncretic blend of Mesopotamian and Persian religious imagery. Cyrus invokes the supreme Babylonian god Marduk, but he was a devout Zoroastrian, a follower of the wise lord Ahura Mazda. This raises profound questions. Was this a genuine act of cross-cultural respect, or a calculated political performance designed to appeal to his new subjects? The cylinder stands as a silent, fractured witness to one of history's most pivotal moments, challenging us to decipher the true intentions of a king who shaped the ancient world, leaving us to wonder where pragmatic statecraft ended and a visionary concept of human dignity began. Yet for every story told in stone, there are countless others locked away in scripts we can no longer read, silent testimonies to histories we've forgotten. This brings us to one of the most tantalizing and academic of the Persian Empire's puzzles, the enduring enigma of Linear Elamite. Imagine holding a book where you recognize the letters, you can sound out the words, but the language itself is completely unknown to you. This is the fundamental challenge scholars face. Unlike the Cyrus Cylinder, written in a well-understood script and language, Linear Elamite represents a writing system used for a language that has been almost entirely lost to time. It was employed in the very heart of the empire, in the ancient region of Elam, modern-day southwestern Iran, a crucial cultural and administrative center for the Persians. The script itself consists of around 80 to 100 signs, a mix of abstract linear symbols and a handful of recognizable pictographs. For over a century, despite the best efforts of the world's most brilliant cryptographers and linguists, the vast majority of these inscriptions have remained stubbornly silent, their messages trapped behind an unbreakable code. The quest to crack Linear Elamite has been a roller coaster of claimed breakthroughs and enduring frustration. The primary obstacle is the sheer lack of material to work with. For decades, scholars had only about 40 known inscriptions to study, and most of these were short, fragmentary, or provided very little context, without a substantial body of text or the holy grail of decipherment. A parallel text like the Rosetta Stone, which presented the same message in both a known and an unknown script, progress was painstakingly slow. Early attempts relied on comparing it to a related, but also poorly understood earlier script called Proto-Elamite. However, this was like trying to solve one mystery with the clues from another, even more obscure mystery. Some signs were tentatively identified, and a handful of words were proposed, but a full decipherment that the academic community could agree upon remained utterly out of reach. The script seemed destined to guard its secrets forever, a permanent reminder of the vast swaths of human experience that simply vanish from the historical record. But then, a discovery sent shockwaves through the world of archaeology and linguistics. In recent years, a team led by German archaeologist Professor Dr. Wouter Henkelmann announced the unearthing of new Linear Elamite inscriptions in the ancient Elamite city of Anshan. These weren't just minor fragments, they were longer, more complete texts offering a potential treasure trove of new data. This was the breakthrough scholars had been praying for. More text means more patterns to analyze, repeated sequences that could be names or titles, grammatical structures that can be mapped, and a greater chance of finding that crucial contextual clue. The new inscriptions are like suddenly finding several new chapters of that mysterious book, dramatically increasing the odds that someone finally can piece together its meaning. The implications of a full decipherment are staggering. It would be like switching on a light in a dark room of history. Linear Elamite texts are believed to be administrative records, royal decrees, and dedicatory inscriptions. Opening them up would provide an unprecedented, ground-level view of how the Persian Empire's bureaucracy actually functioned in one of its core provinces. We could learn about tax collection, resource management, legal disputes, and trade networks directly from the Persians' contemporaries, not from later Greek historians who often had their own biases and agendas. It would give a voice to the Elamite people themselves, revealing their unique perspective on their place within the vast Persian superstructure, their religious beliefs, their social hierarchy, and their daily concerns. This isn't just about solving an academic puzzle, it's about recovering a lost civilization's own story in its own words. So the race is now on, a quiet, determined competition in libraries and laboratories around the globe. Linguists are applying powerful computational models to analyze the new inscriptions, searching for statistical patterns and syntactic structures that the human brain might miss. They are cross-referencing every possible known language from the region, looking for a linguistic relative that might provide the key. The mystery of Linear Elamite stands as a powerful symbol of the limits of our knowledge. It humbles us, showing that even an empire as well documented as Persia still has fundamental truths waiting to be rediscovered, silent voices from the past waiting for the right listener to finally understand what they have been trying to say for 2.5 millennia. Yet the stark simplicity of his tomb has fueled speculation for over 2,000 years. How could the ruler of the known world, a man who amassed incalculable wealth and commanded absolute power, be laid to rest in such an austere, almost humble structure? This glaring contrast is the heart of our fifth mystery. Many historians and archaeologists have come to believe that the true grandeur of Cyrus's final resting place isn't in what we see, but in what we cannot see. They propose that the visible tomb is merely the tip of the iceberg, and that hidden beneath the stone platform and the surrounding plain of Pasargadae could lie a labyrinth of undiscovered chambers, tunnels, and vaults. The theory isn't born from mere fantasy. Ancient texts offer tantalizing, albeit vague, clues. The Greek historian Arrian, writing centuries after Cyrus's death, recorded that Alexander the Great himself visited the tomb and was shown its interior by priests. He described a golden sarcophagus, a table laden with precious vessels, and a wealth of magnificent garments and weaponry, but crucially, he made no mention of any lower levels. However, other fragments of lost histories and local Persian legends have long whispered of a far greater treasure hidden away from prying eyes, not just gold, but something perhaps even more valuable: secret records. Imagine the possibility of a hidden archive containing the original decrees of Cyrus, detailed accounts of his campaigns, or even sacred Zoroastrian texts that were thought to be passed down orally. The loss of the library at Persepolis was a catastrophe for history. Finding a hidden library here would be a miracle. These textual hints have been enough to drive modern scientific inquiry. In recent decades, archaeological teams have returned to Pasargadae with non-invasive technology, aiming to peer into the earth without disturbing the sacred site. Ground-penetrating radar has been deployed around and under the monument, sending electromagnetic pulses into the ground and reading the signals that bounce back. Different materials, solid bedrock, loose soil, voids like tunnels, or metallic objects reflect these signals in unique ways, creating a ghost image of what lies beneath. The results of these surveys have been both electrifying and inconclusive. Some scans have revealed what appear to be anomalous, man-made structures and voids at significant depths directly beneath the tomb's foundation. These aren't just random geological formations. Their sharp, angular shapes suggest architecture, but the mystery is far from solved. The data is often difficult to interpret with absolute certainty. What a radar might flag as a hidden chamber could later be explained as a dense, unusual rock layer or a natural fissure. The ethical dilemma for archaeologists is profound. Do they risk the integrity of this revered World Heritage Site by drilling a small borehole to get a clearer picture? Or do they leave it undisturbed, allowing the secret to remain forever intact out of respect for the long-dead emperor? The potential rewards of discovery are immense, but so are the risks of damaging an irreplaceable monument for what might ultimately be a geological quirk. The tomb of Cyrus thus stands as a silent sentinel, guarding its secrets just as effectively now as it did when Alexander the Great paid his respects. It challenges our perception of simplicity and dares us to wonder if the greatest treasures of the past are still waiting patiently beneath our feet, hidden in plain sight. For a civilization that mastered the art of governing a continent-spanning empire, communication was the vital artery that pumped the lifeblood of command and control. And at the heart of this system was an engineering marvel so advanced it wouldn't be rivaled for over 1,000 years: the Royal Road. This wasn't a simple dirt path. It was the Persian Empire's information superhighway, a meticulously maintained stone-paved artery stretching an astonishing 2,500 kilometers from the administrative capital of Susa, deep in modern-day Iran, all the way to the bustling Aegean port of Sardis in what is now Turkey. Greek historians like Herodotus wrote of its glory with awe, describing a relay of royal couriers who could traverse its entire length in just 7 days, a journey that would take a normal caravan 3 months. They famously boasted that neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds, a testament to its reliability that still echoes today. Yet for all its fame and monumental scale, the Royal Road holds onto a core geographical secret. We cannot say with absolute certainty where large portions of it actually ran. Think of trying to map an ancient interstate using only fragments of old postcards and a few second-hand travelogues. That's the challenge facing historians and archaeologists. Herodotus provides our most detailed account, but his description is more of a list of major stopping points, way stations like Babylon and Nineveh, than a precise turn-by-turn itinerary. The harsh truth is that over 2 millennia, landscapes have changed dramatically. Rivers have changed course, mountains have eroded, and entire cities have been buried by silt or simply vanished. Modern towns and highways have been built directly on top of ancient routes, obliterating the original path without a trace. In many places, the legendary Royal Road is now literally paved over by the very infrastructure of our modern world. This has led to heated debates and fascinating theories about the road's true trajectory, particularly through the formidable mountain ranges of Anatolia and the vast, empty stretches of the Iranian plateau. Archaeologists are essentially historical detectives searching for the faintest clues on the ground. They look for the subtle, telltale scars of old roadbeds, linear depressions cutting across the countryside, the remnants of stone retaining walls holding up a hillside, or the rare carved rock inscription marking the distance to the next imperial station. Each potential segment they uncover is like finding a single piece of a massive, continent-sized jigsaw puzzle where most of the pieces are still missing. One of the most compelling mysteries revolves around the possibility of secret military branches. The Royal Road we read about in the history books was the main public thoroughfare used by traders, diplomats, and official messengers. But could there have been a second, hidden network of roads known only to the Persian military? The empire's ability to move massive armies with surprising speed and secrecy is well documented. When King Xerxes invaded Greece, the sheer scale of his forces' mobilization stunned the Greek city-states. How did they move so many men and so much equipment without raising alarms long before? Some scholars propose the existence of dedicated military spur roads that bypassed major population centers, cutting through remote passes and hidden valleys to allow for the swift and covert movement of troops directly to trouble spots on the empire's vast frontiers. These routes would never appear on any public map or civilian account. Their existence would have been a closely guarded state secret, their construction projects hidden from historical record. This theory would explain why some logical connecting segments of the Royal Road seem to vanish entirely from the archaeological record. It wasn't that the road disappeared. It might be that we've been looking for the wrong type of road in the wrong places. A secret military road wouldn't have been paved with grand stone blocks or lined with ornate way stations. It would have been a practical, hard-packed dirt track, wide enough for a column of soldiers to march 4 abreast, and designed to blend into the landscape, leaving far fewer permanent marks for modern archaeologists to find. The true, complete map of the Persian transportation network might be far more complex and sophisticated than we ever imagined. A dual system of public and private highways that allowed the King of Kings to project his power to any corner of his realm with breathtaking efficiency. Unraveling this mystery means understanding that the Persian Empire's greatest strength wasn't just its army, but its ability to move that army anywhere, almost invisible, across a web of pathways we are only just beginning to perceive. Now consider the most formidable special forces unit in the ancient world, a corps so elite and shrouded in mystery that their very name has echoed through millennia, the Immortals. Greek historians like Herodotus gave them this immortal label because their number never seemed to dwindle. If a man fell sick, was wounded, or killed, he was instantly replaced, ensuring the unit always stood at a perfect, unwavering strength of 10,000. They were the personal guard of the King of Kings, the shock troops of the empire, and the enforcers of Persian will across 3 continents. But who were these men, and how did one earn a place in this most exclusive brotherhood? The secrets of their selection and training are a puzzle that has fascinated military historians for centuries. The recruitment process itself is our first enigma. These were not merely 10,000 of the empire's strongest soldiers. They were almost certainly drawn from a specific, privileged background. The most plausible theory suggests they were recruited exclusively from the Persian heartland, from noble or warrior class families known for their unwavering loyalty to the royal house. This wasn't a standing army open to conscripts. It was a lifelong career of immense prestige, likely passed from father to son, creating dynasties of warriors bound by blood and honor to protect the sovereign. Imagine a young boy born into one of these families, growing up with the singular ambition of one day joining the Immortals. His entire childhood would have been a preparation, a relentless physical and martial conditioning to meet the unit's impossible standards. But beyond this general idea, we have no surviving Persian manual that details the exact criteria. Was there a specific height requirement? A series of grueling tests of strength, endurance, and weapon mastery? The specifics of the initiation rite remain one of history's great silent gaps. What we can piece together about their training, however, paints a picture of a truly unparalleled fighting force. Ancient sources describe them as masters of every weapon in the Persian arsenal. They were equally deadly with the long, thrusting spear, the short echinix dagger, and the powerful composite bow. Their training would have been a brutal, daily regimen designed to forge them into a single, seamless instrument of war. They weren't just individual champions. Their true power lay in their ability to move and fight as one immense, coordinated entity. Drills would have focused on complex battlefield maneuvers, maintaining an unbreakable formation while advancing or retreating over any terrain, and unleashing volleys of arrows with terrifying synchrony before closing in for melee combat. This level of discipline and unit cohesion was light years ahead of most ancient armies, who often relied on the individual heroics of their champions. The Immortals were the ultimate expression of collective military might. Yet, the deepest mystery of this legendary unit isn't just how they fought, but what they wore. The descriptions of their equipment are tantalizing and deeply symbolic. Herodotus provides the most detailed account describing their magnificent appearance: robes of multi-colored cloth, elaborate scale armor made of iron or bronze, and their most famous feature, richly decorated headdresses that some translations call tiaras, which could be worn to cover the face or pushed back. But it's the cryptic details that fuel the greatest speculation. Ancient texts and reliefs hint at enigmatic symbols adorning their armor or standards, motifs whose meanings have been lost. Were these merely decorative, or did they hold a deeper, almost mystical significance? Some historians propose they were clan symbols, identifying the warrior's family lineage. Others suggest they were religious icons related to Zoroastrianism, perhaps invoking the protection of the great god Ahura Mazda, or representing the divine Fa, the royal glory that legitimized the king's rule. The most intriguing theory is that these symbols denoted rank or specific achievements within the unit itself, a complex code of honor that only the Immortals themselves could fully understand. This leads us to a compelling and modern archaeological hunt. If we could just find a single, well-preserved set of their armor, it could unlock the entire symbolic system. The problem is, such a discovery has never been made. Organic materials like their colorful cloth robes and leather straps have long since disintegrated in the soil. Metal scale armor, while more durable, was often looted from battlefields or repurposed over the centuries. The few surviving Persian reliefs, like those at the royal capital of Persepolis, show these elite guards in intricate detail, but the stone carvings cannot convey the vibrant colors or the specific materials used. We are left staring at silent gray images, trying to imagine the dazzling, intimidating spectacle a column of 10,000 immortals must have presented, their armor glinting in the sun, their symbols a silent declaration of power and mystery. The true meaning of those symbols died with the last immortal, a secret code that the Empire's most loyal guardians took to their graves, ensuring their legend would remain truly immortal. But even the mightiest army is useless if it cannot cross the sea, a lesson the Persian Empire learned in one of the most devastating and inexplicable naval disasters of the ancient world. Following the mysterious loss of Cambyses' army in the desert, we encounter a maritime catastrophe of even greater scale, one that effectively reshaped the course of history. In the year 492 BCE, King Darius the Great was determined to punish Athens for its support of a rebellion in Ionia. He ordered his son-in-law, a skilled commander named Mardonius, to lead a massive invasion force into Greece. The plan was ambitious. A huge fleet would sail along the coast of Thrace, supporting the land army and securing the Aegean Sea. The most perilous leg of this journey was the navigation around the treacherous Mount Athos peninsula, a monstrous finger of land jutting into the northern Aegean known for its sudden, violent squalls and unpredictable currents. Despite this fearsome reputation, the Persian admiral chose to risk the passage. What happened next was recorded by the Greek historian Herodotus, who described a cataclysm of almost biblical proportions. A sudden hurricane-force wind, which the Greeks called a hellespontius, descended upon the fleet as it rounded the cape. The storm was so ferocious that it smashed the 300 triremes against the rocky cliffs of Mount Athos. Ships made of wood and secured with loose-fitting mortise and tenon joints were utterly helpless against the waves. The sea, churned into a fury, became a graveyard for 20,000 men, their bodies and their vessels swallowed by the depths in a matter of hours. In a single, brutal stroke, the Persian invasion force was halved, its naval arm completely annihilated, forcing Mardonius to abandon the campaign and retreat in disgrace. For centuries, the official story has been that this was a simple, if tragically monumental, act of nature. The Persians, masters of land warfare, were inexperienced with the mercurial moods of the Aegean Sea and had simply underestimated its power. But the sheer totality of the loss has led many to whisper about a far more sinister possibility: sabotage. Could the disaster have been a meticulously planned act of defensive warfare? The local Greek colonies in the region, notably the city of Potidaea, which was directly in the path of the invasion, had every motive to stop the Persian armada by any means necessary. The concept of using the environment as a weapon was not unknown in ancient warfare. Is it possible that Greek agents, intimately familiar with the local weather patterns, deliberately misled the Persian navigators about the optimal time to attempt the crossing, ensuring they would be caught in the worst possible conditions? Or perhaps they even lit signal fires from the shore, a pre-arranged deception to make the Persian captains believe they were following a safe path that actually led them directly into the storm's heart. While there is no direct evidence for this, it remains a compelling theory that the first great victory against the Persian Empire might not have been won on a battlefield, but through a brilliant, ruthless act of espionage and psychological manipulation. This theory gains even more traction when we confront the most baffling archaeological aspect of this mystery: the complete and utter absence of any wreckage. 300 warships, each a substantial vessel nearly 120 feet long and constructed from tons of wood, bronze, and iron, vanished without leaving a single definitive trace. This isn't just a case of not having found it yet. It's a profound historical void that defies logic. Modern marine archaeology has located shipwrecks from much earlier periods, some resting in deep water, others scattered along coastlines. The Mediterranean preserves wood remarkably well in certain anaerobic conditions. So where is the Mount Athos graveyard? The utter lack of physical evidence is so strange that it forces us to reconsider the entire event. One possibility is that the storm's violence was so extreme that it didn't just sink the ships, it utterly destroyed them. The waves, fueled by hurricane winds, could have slammed the triremes against the sheer cliff faces with such force that the vessels literally shattered into splinters, their remains either washing out to the deep abyssal plain or being buried under centuries of sediment at the base of the mountains. Another, more unsettling theory suggests that the number of ships lost was a massive exaggeration by Herodotus, a propagandistic tool to magnify the glory of the eventual Greek victory at Marathon and Salamis. But even if the number was half of what was recorded, the loss of 150 ships would still leave a massive archaeological signature. The most intriguing explanation is that the disaster did not happen in the deep water off the cape itself, but in the extensive sandbanks and shallows that lie to the north. If the storm drove the fleet aground on these shifting sands, the wreckage would have been broken up by wave action over the centuries, the wooden hulls consumed by shipworm, and the metal components, the bronze rams and armor, scattered and buried deep beneath the sandy seafloor. This would make them incredibly difficult, though not impossible, to find. The disappearance of the Persian fleet at Mount Athos stands as a stark reminder that the sea keeps its secrets better than any desert, leaving us to wonder if we are dealing with a tragic accident of weather, the first recorded act of naval deception, or a historical account that itself was lost in the storm of time. High on a sheer limestone cliff face along an ancient trade route in modern-day Iran, a monumental proclamation stands over 300 feet above the valley floor. This is the Behistun inscription, a colossal billboard of stone commissioned by King Darius the Great to cement his legitimacy following a period of violent upheaval. Carved around 520 BCE, it features a dramatic bas-relief showing Darius triumphantly placing his foot on the chest of a rebellious usurper, while 9 other captured challengers stand bound before him. Below this powerful imagery stretches a massive text painstakingly engraved in 3 different cuneiform scripts: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. For centuries, this trilingual masterpiece was the ultimate locked door to understanding the ancient Middle East, its languages completely indecipherable to the modern world. Then, in the 1830s, a brilliant and daring British Army officer named Henry Rawlinson risked his life repeatedly to scale the cliff and meticulously make papier-mâché casts of the strange writing. His work, along with others, finally provided the key, allowing scholars to crack the code of cuneiform and unlock the histories of Mesopotamia. The Behistun inscription was rightly celebrated as the Rosetta Stone of the ancient Near East, a triumph of archaeological decipherment. But here lies our 9th mystery. What if the most important parts of the message are the parts we can no longer read? A closer examination reveals that the inscription is not the pristine, complete record it appears to be from a distance. Large sections of the text, particularly in the Elamite and Babylonian versions, have suffered significant damage over the millennia. Some of this is due to natural erosion. Wind, rain, and frost have slowly worn away the carefully carved characters. In other areas, the limestone cliff itself has sheared off, taking entire paragraphs of ancient history with it. The most frustrating damage, however, appears to be intentional. There are areas where the stone has been systematically chiseled away, the tool marks suggesting a deliberate act of vandalism aimed at obscuring specific passages. The question is, who would do such a thing, and what were they so desperate to erase? Scholars have long debated the content of these missing sections. The portions we can read are a powerful piece of political propaganda. Darius provides a detailed first-person account of how the rightful king, Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, died, and how a sinister priest and impostor named Gormota seized the throne by pretending to be Cambyses' murdered brother, Bardia. Darius then describes how he, with the divine favor of the supreme god Ahura Mazda, slew the impostor and crushed the rebellions that erupted across the empire. It's a gripping story, but it's also the version of events that the winner wanted everyone to believe. The damaged sections likely held the key details that could either corroborate or completely undermine Darius's narrative. Some historians speculate the missing text might have contained the names of other, more legitimate claimants to the throne that Darius defeated, information he later decided was too dangerous to preserve. Others propose it could have detailed the specific roles powerful noble families played in the rebellion, information that might have been politically sensitive for their descendants generations later. The most tantalizing possibility is that the erased sections contained the original, official version of the succession crisis, a story that contradicted the triumphant tale Darius eventually carved in stone. This is where modern technology enters the scene, offering hope of recovering what was lost. Archaeologists and epigraphers are no longer limited to ropes and papier-mâché. Today, they employ a suite of non-invasive digital tools to try and read the unreadable. One of the most promising techniques is reflectance transformation imaging, or RTI. This process involves taking hundreds of high-resolution photographs of the inscription surface, each with light projected from a different angle. A powerful computer then combines Chinese letter images, allowing researchers to digitally manipulate the lighting virtually. They can enhance the faintest shadows cast by the most microscopic imperfections in the stone, often revealing the ghostly impression of a cuneiform wedge that has been eroded away to the naked eye. It's like using a super-powered magnifying glass that can change the direction of the sun. Another groundbreaking approach is the use of three-dimensional laser scanning. Specialized equipment creates a hyper-detailed digital model of the entire cliff face, mapping every single micron of its topography. This digital twin can then be studied from every angle on a computer screen, and researchers can even apply algorithms to virtually fill in the damaged sections based on the known grammar and vocabulary of the languages. It's a form of digital archaeology, reconstructing history bit by bit. These efforts have already borne some fruit. In recent years, teams working on the Behistun site have managed to identify a handful of previously lost characters and words from the most heavily damaged areas, slowly adding new pieces to this 2,500-year-old puzzle. Each recovered word is a small victory, a potential clue that could change our understanding of one of the most pivotal moments in Persian history. Was Darius the heroic savior of the empire he claims to be, or was he a brilliant usurper who rewrote history to cover his tracks? The truth is quite literally written in stone, but it's hidden in the gaps and scars of the Behistun inscription. The ongoing mission to digitally restore it is more than just an academic exercise. It's a high-tech hunt for a lost reality, a quest to hear the other side of a story that a king tried very hard to silence forever. Imagine the court of the King of Kings, a spectacle of unimaginable wealth and power. Among the glint of gold and the sparkle of jewels, one color would have commanded immediate attention. A color so vivid and deep it seemed to radiate its own light, a majestic, blazing purple. This was not just any dye, it was the legendary royal purple, a color so exclusive and expensive that its use was restricted by law to the Persian emperor and his highest nobles. To wear it was to wear the very authority of the empire itself. But this magnificent hue holds a dark secret, one written in the blood of countless sea creatures. The exact alchemical process to create the most prized version of this dye, the one that adorned the robes of Persian queens and royalty, died with the empire itself, and despite our most advanced modern science, we have never been able to perfectly recreate it. The source of this legendary color was as exotic as its appearance. It didn't come from a plant or a mineral, but from a seemingly humble sea snail found in the eastern Mediterranean. Specifically, 3 species were harvested: the spiny dye murex, the banded dye murex, and the rock shell. the process was both gruesome and grotesquely inefficient. Thousands upon thousands of these mollusks had to be harvested by hand by divers. They were then crushed and their tiny hypobranchial glands, a specific part of their flesh, were extracted and left to putrefy in vast, foul-smelling vats under the sun. The resulting liquid would go through a stunning chromatic transformation, shifting from a yellowish fluid to a greenish hue, and finally, after precise exposure to sunlight and air, settling into that deep, rich, coveted purple. The stench from these ancient dye workshops was said to be so overwhelmingly putrid that they were located downwind of cities, and classical writers remarked that you could smell a purple dye factory long before you could see it. This brings us to the heart of the mystery, the recipe. We understand the basic ingredients and the broad steps, but the ancient dyers possessed a master's knowledge of the precise alchemy involved. The exact number of days for fermentation, the specific temperature reached by the sun, the exact salinity of the water used, the precise moment to add other mystery ingredients to the vat to act as mordants that would bind the dye to the wool. These were the closely guarded trade secrets of guilds of dyers, secrets passed from father to son and never written down. The value of this knowledge was incalculable. It's estimated that it took a staggering 12,000 snails to produce just a single gram of pure dye, making purple cloth, ounce for ounce, literally worth more than its weight in gold. This wasn't just a color, it was the most concentrated form of economic power in the ancient world. Modern chemists and historians, armed with gas chromatography and mass spectrometry, have tried for over a century to reverse engineer the process. They can analyze minute traces of the dye found on ancient textile fragments and recreate a color that looks identical to the naked eye. But they have consistently failed to replicate one crucial, legendary property, its supernatural color fastness. Ancient sources from across the Mediterranean rave that true royal purple did not fade. Instead, they claimed it grew brighter and more vibrant with age and exposure to sunlight. The few surviving scraps of fabric that have been tested seem to support this ancient boast, showing a chemical stability that modern synthetic versions simply cannot match. Our best laboratory recreations, while beautiful, will eventually fade and weaken. The ancient dye seems to have formed a molecular bond with the wool fiber that was virtually permanent. So what was the lost ingredient? What was the final, secret step in the recipe that transformed a smelly animal extract into an eternal color? Some theories propose the use of a now-lost natural mordant, perhaps a specific plant extract or even a rare mineral salt that acted as a chemical bridge, locking the dye molecules irreversibly into place. Others suggest the secret lay not in an additive, but in the painstaking multi-stage process itself. Perhaps the wool was dyed not once, but multiple times in successively stronger batches of the dye, or it was exposed to a specific sequence of light and dark cycles that catalyzed a unique photochemical reaction we no longer understand. The most intriguing possibility is that the true secret died with the Persian Empire itself. When the centers of production were destroyed, the master dyers, the living libraries of this chemical knowledge, vanished and their art regressed to a simpler, cruder form. The quest to rediscover the formula for the Queen's Purple is more than a historical curiosity. It is a race to reclaim a lost technology, to understand a chemical miracle that we, with all our modern prowess, still cannot explain. It is the ghost of a color, a whisper of a process that turned the blood of sea snails into the ultimate symbol of unchanging, eternal power. Ascend the grand staircase of the ceremonial capital, and you are greeted by a silent stone parliament of the ancient world. This is the Apadana Palace at Persepolis, and its walls and stairways are not mere decoration. They are a sprawling, frozen moment of imperial power and diplomacy. Here, intricately carved reliefs depict a seemingly endless procession of delegates from every corner of the empire, each group bringing the unique treasures of their homeland to lay before the King of Kings. We see Armenians presenting magnificent horses, Ethiopians carrying ivory tusks, and Babylonians leading a bull. For decades, these scenes were interpreted as a straightforward record of imperial tribute, a proud display of the empire's vast reach and wealth. But a closer look reveals something far more mysterious. Scattered among these processions are strange, recurring symbols that defy easy explanation, cryptic emblems that suggest these carvings are not just a guest list, but a complex codex of lost tribes, secret alliances, and profound spiritual beliefs waiting to be cracked. The most tantalizing of these symbols are the ones that appear to represent groups with no known historical correlate. Among the clearly identifiable delegations from known satrapies like Lydia or Bactria, there are figures carrying objects or wearing insignia that do not match any civilization recorded in the Persian archives or by Greek historians. One such group shows men presenting what looks like a peculiar, multi-tiered basket of an unknown design. Another depicts delegates holding a standard bearing a unique geometric animal hybrid, a creature unlike any other in the archaeological record of the region. The most compelling theory is that these are depictions of embassies from client states or independent tribes on the very fringes of the known world, groups so remote or so newly contacted that their names were lost when the library of Persepolis burned. They could represent a kingdom from the depths of the Arabian desert, a trading culture from the shores of the Indus Valley that has vanished without a trace, or even a nomadic confederation from the Central Asian steppes that would later emerge as a threat to Persia itself. These enigmatic figures are ghost ambassadors from lost nations, their stories known only through their silent stone representation on this wall. Beyond identifying lost peoples, the symbols may also reveal the hidden language of political relationships. The order of the processions is not random. Their placement on the reliefs is highly deliberate, suggesting a precise hierarchy or a specific diplomatic protocol known only to the court scribes who designed this stone tapestry. The proximity of one delegation to another might indicate a strategic alliance between those provinces, or perhaps a recent reconciliation brokered by the Persian crown. Furthermore, the specific gifts being offered are loaded with symbolic meaning. Presenting a powerful stallion was not just a gift of a valuable animal. In the ancient Near East, it was a potent symbol of submitting one's military strength to the emperor. Offering exotic woods or rare spices was an acknowledgement of Persian control over the trade routes those goods traveled along. Every carved vessel and every piece of cloth is a syllable in a silent speech act of submission and loyalty, a frozen moment of political theater designed to reinforce the power dynamics of the empire for all eternity. This stone narrative extends beyond mere politics and into the deeply spiritual realm. The entire Apadana platform is itself a massive Zoroastrian diagram, a physical manifestation of the cosmic struggle between order and chaos. The grand stairways are flanked by reliefs of the Persian elite, the courtiers and soldiers who represent the forces of good walking in perfect harmony. They are separated from the chaotic, albeit organized, procession of foreign delegations by magnificent reliefs of lions attacking bulls. This is not random animal violence. Most scholars interpret this as a profound Zoroastrian metaphor: the lion, a symbol of the sun and the power of summer, overcoming the bull, a symbol of the moon and the winter. It represents the eternal victory of light over darkness, of cosmic order, known as a Shah over the falsehood of Drudge. The foreign delegations in this spiritual context are not just bringing tribute, they are participating in a ritual. By presenting their worldly goods, they are actively contributing to the maintenance of this cosmic order, strengthening the divine mandate of the King of Kings and ensuring the continued triumph of light over darkness throughout the empire and the universe itself. So how do we begin to decode this stone puzzle? Modern archaeologists are using digital technology to attempt just that. High-resolution, three-dimensional laser scanning of the entire Apadana relief is creating a perfect digital twin, allowing researchers to study every chisel mark and worn symbol in minute detail from anywhere in the world. This enables them to perform intricate analyses, comparing the unknown symbols against a vast database of iconography from other contemporary cultures, searching for a match that might finally put a name to a lost tribe. They can also analyze the precise stylistic nuances of the carvings. Subtle differences in the depth of the cuts or the style of the drapery might indicate that certain sections were carved by different artisans at different times, potentially revealing which delegations were added later as the empire expanded or forged new alliances. The Apadana Palace is far more than a ruined throne room. It is a 2,500-year-old diplomatic cable, a spiritual manifesto, and a map of the known world, all etched in stone. Its hidden symbols challenge us to look beyond the obvious and listen for the whispers of lost nations and forgotten faiths in the silent march of stone figures. Deep within the heart of the empire, in secluded temples far from the bustling cities and grand palaces, burned the very soul of Persia, the sacred fire. For the followers of Zoroastrianism, the state religion, fire was not something to be worshipped, but was the purest symbol of the divine, a visible manifestation of the light and wisdom of Ahura Mazda, the wise lord. These were not simple ceremonial flames lit for a service and then extinguished. They were eternal fires meant to burn continuously for centuries, never once allowed to flicker and die. The responsibility for maintaining these fires fell to an elite class of Zoroastrian priests known as the Magi, and how they achieved this feat of perpetual combustion, especially in remote temples with primitive technology, is a secret they guarded so fiercely that its full truth may be lost to time. Imagine the sheer, daunting challenge they faced. They couldn't just throw another log on the fire. The sacred fire had to be utterly pure, free from any form of contamination. This meant it could never be fed with ordinary wood, which produces smoke and ash, or with animal fat or oil, which were considered impure. The primary fuel was exclusively clean, dried wood, specifically from aromatic trees like sandalwood or cedar, but even this had to be handled with extreme ritual care. The priests would use long metal tongs so their own breath would not pollute the flame as they added fuel. The fire itself was housed in a massive, stone-lined urn called an aphaganiu, often placed in a central chamber beneath a monumental domed roof designed to draw smoke upward. The logistical operation to keep such a flame alive was staggering. A constant supply of specially prepared fuel had to be sourced, transported, and stored, requiring a small army of dedicated attendants working in shifts day and night for generations. This is where we encounter the first layer of the mystery, the potential for a lost chemical science. While the orthodox teaching was that only pure wood was used, whispers and fragments of text suggest the Magi may have possessed advanced knowledge of chemistry to enhance and preserve their flames. Could they have created a proprietary blend of minerals or salts that, when added to the fire, made it burn hotter, cleaner, and far longer on less fuel? Some historians point to the discovery of unusual mineral residues near ancient temple sites, traces of nitrates or sulfates that could act as oxidizers, dramatically increasing the efficiency of combustion. There are even tantalizing theories about a specially treated, eternal ember at the heart of the fire, a ceramic or metallic object infused with a chemical catalyst that allowed it to hold a glowing heat for days, ensuring the fire could be easily rekindled from its own core even if the visible flame was temporarily subdued for ritual transfer. This wouldn't be magic, it would be a profound, guarded understanding of pyrochemistry, a sacred science passed down only to the most senior Magi. Equally ingenious were the temples themselves, which were marvels of passive environmental engineering. The most famous design is the Chahar Tak, or four arches, a square room topped by a dome. This architecture was not merely for grandeur, it was a highly functional ventilation system. The dome created a powerful convection current, pulling in fresh air from strategically placed vents at the base of the structure and funneling smoke and hot air up and out through a central opening at the top. This constant, passive draft ensured the fire always had a steady supply of oxygen to burn brightly while simultaneously keeping the inner sanctum free of smoke, preserving the purity of the air around the divine flame. The precise angle of the vents, the height of the dome, and the composition of the building materials were all likely calibrated through centuries of trial and error to create the perfect environment for perpetual combustion in Iran's varied and often harsh climate. This sacred architecture was a machine designed for a single, holy purpose. So why, with all our modern scientific tools, don't we know the exact methods? The answer lies in the sacred vow of silence. The Magi were not just priests, they were a secretive, initiatory brotherhood. Their most profound knowledge, including the complete rituals for maintaining the fire, was considered so holy that it was never written down. It was transmitted orally from a high priest to his chosen successor in a sacred language, Avestan, often in secluded settings away from any possible eavesdropper. This was knowledge protected by tradition, ritual, and absolute secrecy. Furthermore, the destruction of the Persian Empire by Alexander the Great was a catastrophic blow to this living library. Temples were desecrated, priests were killed, and the unbroken chain of oral tradition was severed in many regions. While the faith and its practices survived, some of the most ancient and intricate secrets may have died forever in the chaos of that conquest. Today, the tradition continues in a handful of fire temples, most notably the Atash Baram in Yazd, Iran, and several in India where Zoroastrians, known as Parsis, found refuge. The sacred fire in Yazd is said to have been burning since 470 AD. Yet, even the modern caretakers are protective of their specific practices, viewing them as a sacred trust rather than a historical curiosity for outsiders. The secret of the eternal fire endures not because it is impossible to understand, but because it was never meant to be fully known by those outside the faith. It stands as a powerful testament to a civilization that saw no divide between science and spirit, engineering and devotion, and chose to protect the heart of its belief not in stone, but in a living, breathing, everlasting flame. Beyond the sacred flames and stone ambassadors lies a legend that has tantalized treasure hunters for centuries, a story of wealth so immense it borders on myth, the vanished treasure of Ecbatana. This was no ordinary hoard. Ecbatana, the ancient summer capital of the Median and later the Persian Empire, was renowned throughout the ancient world as the financial heart of the realm, a place where the accumulated tribute of conquered kingdoms was stored. Greek historians like Polybius wrote with awe of the city's fortifications and its legendary royal treasury, describing it as the ultimate storehouse for plunder collected over generations. The sheer scale of the wealth was said to be unimaginable. Mountains of gold and silver ingots, chests overflowing with pearls and gemstones from India, exquisite jewelry from Lydia, and artifacts of incalculable value from Egypt and Babylon. This was the empire's central bank, a physical manifestation of its overwhelming power, and then it was gone. Not a single significant hoard from this legendary repository has ever been found, leaving us with a profound historical void and a gripping mystery. Where did it all go? The most persistent and tantalizing theory is that the treasure was never truly lost, but simply hidden too well. Ecbatana was famous for its innovative and supposedly impregnable architecture. According to ancient accounts, the city was built on a high plain and featured 7 concentric walls, each painted a different color and each higher than the last, with the innermost walls plated in gold and silver that glittered in the sun. Beneath this dazzling complex, legend speaks of a labyrinth of underground chambers and tunnels, a secret vault system designed to protect the empire's wealth from any conceivable threat. It is a compelling idea that the entire treasury was systematically moved into these subterranean strongholds in the face of the advancing army of Alexander the Great, sealed behind stone doors and forgotten when the conqueror's attention turned elsewhere. The logistical feat would have been staggering, but for an empire that built the royal road, it was not impossible. These chambers, if they exist, could still be there, buried under millennia of sediment and the modern city of Hamadan, waiting for a chance discovery to rewrite history. Yet a far more pragmatic and grim possibility exists. When Alexander did finally take the city in 330 BCE, the historical records become curiously vague about what he actually found. While he is famously recorded as seizing a vast fortune at Persepolis, the accounts of Ecbatana are notably less spectacular. This has led many historians to propose a devastating alternative. The treasure was systematically liquidated. To fund his massive military campaigns and to pay his restless army, the Persian emperors who preceded Alexander may have been slowly but surely melting down the artistic and cultural masterpieces of their empire, transforming unique golden statues and silver reliefs into anonymous, standardized coinage. The beautiful crafted works of art, each telling a story of a conquered people, would have been fed into furnaces, their historical value destroyed to create mere currency to pay soldiers and bureaucrats. In this scenario, the treasure of Ecbatana didn't vanish. It was converted into drachmas and spent, its physical form lost forever to the mundane needs of running a vast, expensive empire. This theory of systematic melting is supported by the frustrating lack of archaeological evidence. Despite extensive searches and occasional surveys around modern Hamadan, no large-scale underground complexes matching the descriptions of the legendary treasury have ever been conclusively identified. The few ancient basements and tunnels that have been found are either natural formations or much later constructions. Furthermore, the numismatic evidence, the study of ancient coins, tells a subtle but revealing story. There is a noticeable increase in the volume of Persian coinage in the decades before Alexander's invasion, suggesting the mints were working overtime. Where was all this precious metal coming from? It is entirely plausible that it was coming from the melted-down treasures of Ecbatana and other royal storehouses. The treasure, in a very real sense, is all around us, scattered across the former empire in the form of millions of common coins, its glorious original form forever erased. The final, most dramatic possibility involves a swift and catastrophic dispersal. The chaos following Alexander's death and the brutal wars between his squabbling generals, the Diadochi, could have provided the perfect cover for the treasure's final plunder. As competing armies fought for control of the former Persian capitals, a secret convoy could have smuggled the remaining wealth out of Ecbatana, only to be lost to bandits, a flash flood in a mountain pass, or simply buried in a panic and never recovered. The treasure would have been broken into countless smaller caches, scattered across the landscape, its legend growing even as its physical reality faded into countless local folktales and dead ends. The hunt for the vanished treasure of Ecbatana ultimately forces us to confront the fragile nature of history itself. It asks whether we are searching for a physical location or chasing a ghost, a memory of wealth so vast that its absence has become a mystery more powerful than its existence ever was. While the empire mastered the deserts and mountains, it also ruled the waves, building a maritime network that connected its vast territories. But what if entire chapters of this naval history now lie hidden beneath the water's surface, preserved in the deep? This brings us to one of the most alluring geological mysteries of the ancient world, the search for lost cities submerged beneath the Persian Gulf. For centuries, local legends and fragments of ancient texts have spoken of thriving ports and trading centers that simply vanished, swallowed by the sea. These weren't just outposts, they were likely vital hubs in the Persian economic machine, places where goods from Mesopotamia, India, and Africa were exchanged. Now, cutting-edge technology is revealing that these stories may be more than just myth, uncovering clues to a lost coastal world that could rewrite our understanding of Persian commerce and culture. The most prominent theory explaining these disappearances points to a massive and relatively recent geological event. Unlike the slow, steady rise of sea levels we see today, the landscape around the Persian Gulf experienced something far more dramatic. Around 8,000 years ago, as the last ice age ended, gigantic ice sheets melted, causing global sea levels to rise, but the land here was also sinking. A phenomenon known as post-glacial adjustment meant that the enormous weight of the ice had previously pressed down on the northern continents, causing the landmass around the Gulf to bulge upward. When the ice melted, that bulge began to sink back down. This one-two punch of rising water and sinking land would have inundated the coastline at a startling rate, possibly swallowing vast stretches of inhabited shorelines within a few generations. Ancient Persian maps and accounts, like those from the Sasanian period much later, sometimes refer to places that simply don't appear on any modern chart, hinting at a memory of lands that were lost to this relentless encroachment. For decades, searching for these sunken cities was like looking for a needle in a haystack at the bottom of the ocean. The Gulf's waters are often silty and turbulent, making traditional diving surveys difficult and expensive. The breakthrough came with the advent of advanced marine remote sensing. In recent years, oil companies and research vessels mapping the seafloor for pipelines and cables began employing high-resolution multi-beam sonar and sub-bottom profilers. These tools act like underwater radar, painting an incredibly detailed picture of the seabed's topography and even revealing structures buried beneath layers of sediment. As they scanned, they didn't just find natural formations. They began to identify eerie, unmistakably man-made shapes. The most compelling discoveries are emerging off the coasts of Iran and the United Arab Emirates. Sonar images have revealed what appear to be the ghostly outlines of extensive foundations, the grid-like patterns of ancient streets, and the crumbled remains of large, rectangular buildings resting in the deep. One particularly intriguing site shows a series of concentric circular formations that some archaeologists speculate could be the remnants of a once formidable harbor wall or a unique religious structure. These aren't small fishing villages. The scale suggests significant urban centers, potentially home to thousands of people. The depth at which they're found anywhere from 30 to 100 feet below the current surface aligns perfectly with models of how much the Gulf has risen since the era of the Persian Empire. Each of these sonar ghosts is a potential Pompeii of the sea, a settlement frozen in time at the moment it was abandoned to the waves. The potential archaeological value of these sites is almost impossible to overstate. A city submerged rapidly by rising water is a time capsule of incredible preservation. The silt and sand that cover it create a low-oxygen environment that can protect organic materials that would have vanished on land. We could find wooden ship hulls in pristine condition, giving us the first true blueprints of the vessels that plied Persian trade routes. We could uncover warehouses still containing amphorae of wine, sacks of spices, and bolts of silk, providing an exact inventory of what was traded in the empire's golden age. Most importantly, we might find archives. Waterlogged clay tablets with cuneiform inscriptions could survive perfectly, potentially containing the administrative records of the port, detailing taxes, cargo manifests, and correspondence with the imperial heartland. This wouldn't just be about finding pretty artifacts, it would be about recovering the lost paperwork of the Persian maritime economy, giving us a ground-level view of how the empire truly functioned as a commercial superpower. Yet, the hunt is fraught with immense challenges and ethical dilemmas. The political tensions in the region make international archaeological cooperation complex, as these potential sites often lie in contested waters. Furthermore, the same waters that hide these cities are also some of the most strategically and economically vital in the world, crisscrossed by tanker lanes and dotted with oil rigs. An archaeologist's dream site could be sitting right next to a major pipeline, making excavation incredibly dangerous or even politically impossible. There's also the race against time and modern development. As Gulf nations expand their coastlines with massive land reclamation projects, they risk burying or destroying these underwater ruins forever under tons of sand and rock before they can ever be properly studied. The mystery of the Persian Gulf's submerged cities is a stark reminder that history is not always buried in the sand. Sometimes it's hidden in the silent, dark depths, waiting for us to finally be willing and able to listen to its story. Every single meal presented to the King of Kings was a potential assassination attempt, a silent battlefield where the deadliest weapons were not swords but flavor. In this constant, invisible war, the most trusted soldier was not a general, but the royal cupbearer, an elite guardian whose very body was the ultimate instrument of security. This was no mere servant pouring wine. It was a position of immense honor and unimaginable risk, held by individuals trained in an art that blended keen observation, botanical wisdom, and a terrifyingly intimate knowledge of death. The methods they used to shield their sovereign from poison were so effective they became the stuff of legend, yet the precise details of their craft have evaporated from history, leaving us to wonder how they performed this deadly duty so successfully for centuries. The most famous technique, immortalized in the biblical story of Nehemiah, was the simple, horrifyingly direct act of tasting. Before any food or drink touched the king's lips, the cupbearer would consume a portion himself. This was a human early warning system, a sacrificial guarantee of the meal's safety. But this was far more sophisticated than a simple gamble with fate. These men were not just random volunteers, they were highly trained specialists. It is believed they built up a gradual tolerance to certain known, common poisons by consuming tiny, non-lethal doses over many years, a process known as Mithridatism. This practice, named after the later king Mithridates VI of Pontus, who was famed for it, would have allowed a cupbearer to ingest an amount of toxin that would kill an ordinary man, experiencing only mild, recognizable symptoms that would signal danger without costing him his life. His body became a calibrated instrument, finely tuned to detect the subtlest whispers of corruption. Beyond this brutal physiological conditioning, the cupbearer's toolkit was likely filled with mysterious natural antidotes. Ancient Persian medicine, deeply influenced by Zoroastrian traditions and the vast botanical knowledge of their empire, was remarkably advanced. The magi, the priestly class, were not just fire tenders, they were also master herbalists. They would have possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of plants and their properties, passing down recipes for potent antidotes that could neutralize or counter the effects of many known toxins. Imagine the cupbearer taking a sip of wine, then discreetly chewing on a specific root or swallowing a prepared paste of herbs known to bind with and nullify common poisons like arsenic or hemlock. The formula for these universal antidotes, known in later centuries as Mithridatium or Theriac, was a state secret of the highest order, a closely guarded recipe that died with the empire's collapse. Modern scientists can only guess at the exact blend of dozens of ingredients like opium, myrrh, cinnamon, and castoreum, which might have worked in concert to stimulate vomiting, protect the stomach lining, or bind directly to toxic molecules. Their arsenal also included sophisticated physical tools that hint at a proto-scientific understanding of chemistry. Historical accounts and later Islamic texts describe the use of specially crafted vessels made from certain stones, crystals, or metals believed to react in the presence of poison. A cup made from narwhal horn or a specific type of jade might be used, based on the belief that these materials would sweat, change color, or crack if a toxin was present. The most enduring and plausible tool was the bezoar stone, a hard, calcified concretion found in the digestive tracts of goats and other animals. For centuries, these stones were revered across the East as universal antidotes. The theory was that when placed in a poisoned drink, the porous bezoar would absorb or neutralize the toxin. While modern science debunks their magical properties, there is a grain of truth here. Certain bezoars composed of calcium phosphate can actually bind to some arsenic compounds, reducing their potency. The royal cupbearers would have had access to the finest and most potent of these talismans, employing them as a critical layer of defense. Perhaps the most fascinating and lost technique was the art of sensory forensics. A master cupbearer was a connoisseur of the senses. He would first visually inspect the food and drink for any unnatural film, discoloration, or sediment. He would then swirl the wine in the cup, not for ceremony, but to aerate it and release its bouquet, smelling for the faint, bitter almond scent of cyanide or the metallic tang of arsenic. Finally, he would take a small sip, letting it wash over his entire palate, trained to detect the slightest hint of an off flavor that any ordinary person would miss: a subtle bitterness, an unexpected numbness, or an unusual tingling sensation that betrayed a poison's presence. This was a lifetime of training, a hyper-development of the senses that turned a man into a living, breathing poison detector. The complete disappearance of this entire school of knowledge is one of history's quietest tragedies. When the Persian court fell, the need for such specific elite protectors vanished. Their art, passed down orally from one generation of cupbearers to the next, was never written into manuals. It was a living science that required a royal patron and a constant, looming threat to sustain it. Without that world, the secrets of the king's cupbearer simply faded away, a testament to a unique form of loyalty where a man's life was literally the first line of defense for his king. Now, let's travel from the sunken cities of the Persian Gulf to a quiet museum in Naples, Italy, where an extraordinary artifact from ancient Greece holds a mirror up to the Persian Empire, reflecting not just its image but potentially its deepest secrets. This is the Darius vase, a magnificent volute crater painted in Apulia around 330 BCE. At first glance, it appears to be a straightforward piece of Greek propaganda. The central scene shows the Persian king Darius I, easily identified by his inscriptions and ornate royal attire, perched on a throne while a winged victory figure hovers above him. Below, a personification of Greece is brought before him, and a line of tributaries approaches. For generations, this was interpreted as a simple, boastful depiction of Persian power and hubris, a narrative crafted by Greek artists for a Greek audience. But a closer, more critical look reveals a far more complex and cryptic story, one that has led some scholars to propose that this vase is not just a depiction of history, but a sophisticated visual code packed with hidden messages about the fragile nature of Persian authority. The mystery begins with the peculiar cast of characters surrounding Darius. This is no generic royal court. Each figure is meticulously labeled with a name, and these are not random choices. Flanking the king are his son and crown prince Xerxes and a mysterious counselor labeled simply Eros. More intriguingly, the line of tribute bearers approaching the throne are not the typical anonymous envoys. They are specifically named as the personified cities of Greece, Hellas, Greece herself, Asia, and Ionia. This shift from the generic to the hyper-specific is the first clue that the artist is doing something more than creating a generic scene of imperial triumph. He is referencing a very specific moment in time and a very specific political reality. The vase was created shortly after the Persian Wars, a time when Greek artists were obsessed with their victory over the colossal empire. Yet, this scene doesn't show a Greek victory, it shows Persian power. This dissonance is the heart of the puzzle. One compelling theory suggests the vase is actually a brilliant piece of psychological warfare, a visual prediction of the empire's inevitable downfall disguised as a scene of its strength. The key is in the details. Darius is shown not in a dynamic pose of command, but seated, almost static, while the action happens around him. The winged figure above him is often called Victory, but could it be interpreted differently? Some scholars argue her gesture is ambiguous. She might not be crowning Darius, but merely hovering, a symbol of the fickle nature of fortune that could just as easily abandon him. The most powerful clue is the presence of the elderly counselor, Eros, who whispers into the king's ear. His name translates roughly to "he who speaks wisely," and his urgent, confidential posture suggests he is delivering a crucial, perhaps ominous, warning that Darius appears to ignore. The entire composition could be a sophisticated Greek critique, a portrayal of the Persian court as overconfident and arrogant, blinded by its own power to the rising threat of the Greek city-states, with the counselor's warning serving as the ignored prophecy of their coming defeat. Another, even more fascinating interpretation posits that the hidden message isn't about Greek victory at all, but about internal Persian politics. The vase was created in a Greek colony in southern Italy, a region that had extensive trade contacts with the Persian Empire. Is it possible that the artist had access to insider information from Persian diplomats or merchants? The specific depiction of Xerxes standing directly behind his father is loaded with significance. The succession of Darius was not a simple matter. Ancient sources hint at considerable court intrigue. By placing Xerxes in such a prominent position, the artist might be commenting on and legitimizing his claim to the throne, perhaps even echoing official Persian propaganda that was being disseminated to the Greek world to ensure a smooth transition of power and discourage Greek support for any other potential claimants. In this reading, the vase is less a boast and more a sophisticated diplomatic cartoon, acknowledging Persian power while subtly embedding a commentary on its internal vulnerabilities for a knowledgeable audience. The true meaning of the Darius vase remains one of art history's most engaging debates because it operates on multiple levels simultaneously. For the average Greek viewer, it was likely a thrilling and slightly terrifying image of their formidable enemy. For a more educated, elite viewer, perhaps a politician or a merchant who moved in international circles, the carefully labeled names and specific compositions could have been a talking point, a visual representation of complex geopolitical realities. The artist has masterfully used the language of imagery, posture, gesture, labeling, and symbolic figures to create a work that is both a narrative and a cipher. It challenges us to look beyond the surface to understand that ancient art was rarely just decorative. It was a powerful medium for communication, satire, and political subversion. The Darius vase doesn't just show us a king, it invites us to listen in on a 2,500-year-old conversation, the full meaning of which we are still striving to hear. Imagine standing in the searing heat of the central Iranian desert, a barren landscape where rainfall is a rare gift and surface water is a mirage. Yet all around you, life flourishes, fields of wheat sway in the breeze, orchards heavy with fruit stretch to the horizon, and thriving communities have existed for millennia. This is not a miracle, it is a masterpiece of engineering, one of the most stunning and sustained technological achievements of the ancient world, the Persian Qanat. These are not simple wells or irrigation ditches. A qanat is a gravity-fed underground aqueduct, a gently sloping tunnel that taps into a water table at the base of a mountain and channels it, sometimes for dozens of miles, to the arid plains below. For the Persian Empire, the qanat was more valuable than any army. It was the technology that built the empire itself, allowing them to transform barren wastelands into prosperous agricultural centers and sustain massive cities in the most inhospitable environments. But how did ancient engineers without theodolites, GPS, or advanced mathematics accomplish a feat that would challenge even modern surveyors? The secrets of how they designed these life-giving arteries with such breathtaking precision remain a captivating puzzle. The construction of a qanat began with a desperate need for water and a profound understanding of the land. The first and most mysterious step was finding the water source. How did these ancient hydrologists know exactly where to dig? They were masters of geomorphology, reading the landscape like a map. They looked for specific vegetation, lush patches of green that hinted at subsurface moisture. They observed the flight paths of certain birds at dawn and dusk, knowing they would fly toward water. They studied the lay of the land, identifying alluvial fans at the base of mountains where water from melting snow would naturally seep into the ground, creating a hidden aquifer. Once a potential source was identified, the real challenge began: creating a mother well. This was a monumental undertaking. Workers would dig a deep, vertical shaft, sometimes over 100 meters straight down through rock and hard soil. This was incredibly dangerous work, with constant threats of cave-ins and suffocation. The mother well's purpose was to confirm the water table's depth and volume. If it proved successful, the grueling work of tunneling could begin. This is where the greatest engineering mystery unfolds. From the mother well, crews had to dig a gently sloping tunnel back toward the destination, a village or field that could be tens of kilometers away. The slope was everything. If the gradient was too steep, the water would flow too fast, eroding the tunnel walls and wasting the precious resource. If it was too shallow, the water would stagnate and fail to reach its destination. The required slope was astonishingly slight, often a drop of only 1 meter for every kilometer of tunnel, a gradient of just 0.1%. Maintaining this perfect, laser-straight angle through solid rock and earth without any modern leveling instruments seems impossible. So how did they do it? The prevailing theory involves a deceptively simple tool: a length of rope and 2 people. One worker would remain at the tunnel face, while another stood at the last completed shaft opening, holding a weighted rope. By aligning these 2 points, they could maintain a straight line. For the slope, they likely used a simple water level, a long trough of water that provides a perfectly level reference point. From that level reference, they could carefully measure a precise drop over a set distance using marked poles, establishing the critical gradient before tunneling onward. This method required unimaginable patience and skill, a testament to the artisanal knowledge passed down through generations of Mukanis, the revered Kanat diggers. The sheer scale of this network is almost incomprehensible. The collective length of all Persian Kanats is estimated to be well over 160,000 miles, a distance that could stretch around the entire planet more than 6 times. Some individual Kanats are staggering in their ambition. The Zarch Kanat in Yazd, for example, stretches for over 50 miles and has nearly 2,000 vertical access shafts. These shafts were not just for digging, they were crucial for ventilation during construction and for maintenance for centuries after. This leads to another layer of the mystery: the sophisticated social organization required. Building a Kanat was a massive community project, funded and organized through complex agreements on water rights that were meticulously documented and enforced. The system's maintenance was a sacred duty, with knowledge of specific tunnels and their vulnerabilities carefully guarded by guilds of Mukanis. This was a living technology, a symbiotic relationship between a society and its environment that lasted for thousands of years. Perhaps the most enduring secret of the Kanat is its sheer sustainability, a lesson modern civilization has yet to fully learn. Unlike powerful motorized pumps that drain aquifers faster than they can recharge, the Kanat is a model of gentle, sustainable extraction. It only draws water at the rate the aquifer naturally replenishes itself. Furthermore, because the water travels underground, almost nothing is lost to evaporation under the desert sun. It is a zero-energy system powered solely by gravity that has reliably delivered water for irrigation and drinking for over 2,500 years. Many ancient Kanats are still in use today, a testament to the brilliance of their design. The mathematical principles they used were not written in complex equations but were embodied in practice, a deep, intuitive understanding of hydrogeology, geometry, and physics that was generations ahead of its time. The Persian Kanat is more than an ancient wonder. It is a silent, flowing testament to human ingenuity, a hidden network of life that turned the desert into a garden and challenges us to build not just for today but for the millennia to come. Yet for all its monumental splendor, the true heart of Persepolis wasn't its towering columns or grand staircases. It was its library. This was the central processing unit of the empire, a vast archive where thousands upon thousands of clay tablets recorded the breathtakingly complex bureaucracy required to manage history's first superpower. Every transaction, every ration for workers, every payment to artisans, every movement of troops across thousands of miles was meticulously noted in neat cuneiform script on palm-sized tablets of baked clay. Then, in 330 BCE, Alexander the Great's army arrived, and in a fire that reportedly raged for days, the great wooden halls of the archives were consumed, baking the very tablets meant to be destroyed into accidental immortality. The tragedy, however, is that for every single tablet that survived the inferno, countless others written on far more perishable materials were lost forever, creating a black hole in the very center of our understanding of the Persian Empire. The surviving tablets, known as the Persepolis Fortification Archive, offer a mesmerizing but frustratingly narrow window into this lost world. They are not the grand chronicles of kings or the epic poetry of conquests. They are the paperwork, the receipts. We learn about the issuance of flour, wine, and sheep to priests and diplomats traveling the royal road. We see the meticulous accounting for the workers who built the city itself. From these fragments, we can painstakingly reconstruct the empire's incredible economic engine, its distribution networks, and the daily lives of its middle managers. But these are the records of a single, roughly 20-year period. They are the equivalent of finding a company's payroll ledgers from the 1980s and trying to reconstruct its entire corporate strategy, its research and development secrets, and the personal biographies of its CEO. The truly crucial documents, the detailed royal chronicles, the diplomatic correspondence with Greece and Egypt, the sacred Zoroastrian texts that may have been written down, the maps, the engineering schematics for projects like the Khanats were almost certainly recorded on more prestigious and infinitely more flammable materials. Parchment scrolls, papyri, and treated leather sheets would have been the medium for the empire's most important knowledge, and all of it turned to ash in the conflagration. The smoke from that fire didn't just carry away the scent of cedar and precious oils. It carried the voices of emperors, the wisdom of priests, and the first-hand accounts of history itself. This immense loss is what fuels one of the most tantalizing theories in all of archaeology, the possibility of a duplicate backup archive hidden deep beneath the ruins. The Persians were brilliant administrators, and they understood the fragility of power and knowledge. Is it conceivable that they would have entrusted their entire imperial memory to a single, vulnerable above-ground repository? The concept of a secret, underground library is not as far-fetched as it seems. We know the palace complex at Persepolis was built upon a massive, hand-leveled stone platform that contains numerous subterranean channels and chambers, likely for drainage and storage. Furthermore, the nearby royal tomb sites at Naksh-e-Rustam demonstrate a clear mastery of rock-cut architecture, an ability to carve vast, stable spaces deep into the heart of mountains. The theory posits that a secure, climate-controlled vault could have been tunneled out beneath the treasury or the Apadana, designed to protect duplicate copies of the most vital scrolls and tablets from exactly the kind of catastrophe that ultimately occurred. This wouldn't have been a public library, but a state secret of the highest order, known only to the king, his chief treasurer, and a handful of trusted archivists. The contents of such a chamber would be beyond priceless. It could contain the actual personal journals of Cyrus the Great or Darius, detailing their motivations and strategies. It could hold the complete legal codes of the empire, the original charters for the satrapies, and the true, unedited reports from military campaigns that would counter the biased accounts written by their Greek enemies. Most alluring of all, it could house the sacred Avesta, the core texts of Zoroastrianism, in their complete, original form, potentially revolutionizing our understanding of one of the world's oldest continuous religions. Modern technology has brought this theory from the realm of pure speculation into the arena of genuine investigation. In recent years, archaeological teams have begun using non-invasive tools to peer into the earth beneath Persepolis without disturbing the sacred ruins. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have been conducted, sending pulses of energy into the ground and measuring the returning signals to map subsurface anomalies. Some of these scans have identified what appear to be void spaces and structured, rectilinear formations that don't match natural geological patterns, lying at significant depths directly under the palace platform. While these could be natural fissures or previously unknown drainage systems, their shape and placement are provocative. The ethical dilemma, however, is profound. How does one ethically excavate beneath the foundational stones of one of the world's most important heritage sites? Any attempt to drill or tunnel could risk destabilizing the entire complex. The lost library of Persepolis, if it exists, remains protected not by locks, but by the immense weight of history and the responsibility we have to preserve it, forcing us to wonder if some secrets are meant to stay buried, leaving the full story of the Persian Empire to forever linger just out of reach, hidden in the darkness beneath our feet. Now we turn from the tangible world of libraries and aqueducts to the hidden realm of faith and the soul, to a mystery that seeped from the heart of Persia into the very bedrock of the Roman Empire. In the damp, underground chambers beneath the streets of ancient Rome, a secretive all-male cult practiced rituals so veiled in secrecy that even today their full meaning eludes us. This was the cult of Mithras, centered on the heroic figure of Mithras slaying a cosmic bull. For centuries, this was considered a uniquely Roman mystery religion. Yet its roots, its very name, point eastward to the Persian Empire and its ancient Zoroastrian god, Mithra. The profound mystery is how a minor Zoroastrian divinity of covenant and friendship was transformed into the central, savior-like figure of a powerful Roman cult, and why the Persians themselves left behind so few clues about their own role in this spiritual evolution. The connection begins with the name itself. In the Zoroastrian pantheon of ancient Persia, Mithra, note the slightly different spelling, was a Yazata, a divine being subordinate to the supreme god Ahura Mazda. He was not a bull slayer, but a god of contracts, of friendship, of the light that precedes the dawn, and crucially of the oath. He was the divine witness to agreements, the enforcer of promises, and thus a fundamental pillar of social order. Soldiers in the Persian army would have sworn oaths in his name, and his presence was invoked to ensure honesty and loyalty. This concept of a god who presided over sacred bonds made him immensely appealing to the Roman military, a world built on hierarchy, loyalty oaths, and unbreakable unit cohesion. The leap from a Persian god of covenants to a Roman god of soldierly brotherhood is not a vast one, but the path he took to get there is shrouded in absolute darkness. This is where the historical trail goes cold, creating our core enigma. How did the Persian Mithra become the Roman Mithras? One compelling theory points to the intermediary role of the Cilician pirates, a formidable band of seafarers based in what is now southern Turkey, whom the Roman general Pompey subdued in the 1st century BCE. Ancient sources like Plutarch mention that these pirates practiced strange, secret rites of Mithras. It's possible that these pirates, operating on the fringes of the former Persian Empire, had absorbed and adapted local Persian religious ideas, creating a hybrid, more militarized version of the worship of Mithra. When they were conquered and subsequently conscripted into the Roman legions, they may have carried these evolving beliefs with them, seeding them throughout the vast Roman military machine, where they found unbelievably fertile ground. The rituals of the Roman Mithraic cult are a black box of history precisely because they were so effective at keeping their secrets. Initiation was a multi-stage process, moving through 7 grades, each associated with a planet and symbolized by a specific animal and set of attributes: the raven, the bride, the soldier, the lion, the Persian, the sun runner, and the father. What happened in the Mithraeum, the underground temple designed to resemble a cave during the ceremonies for each grade? Classical writers who were not initiates could only gossip and speculate. They whispered about terrifying ordeals designed to test courage and faith, perhaps involving blindfolds, binding, and simulated threats. They spoke of sacred meals where initiates shared bread and wine, ritually reenacting a feast Mithras had with the sun god. But without a single, first-hand written account from an initiate, the cult's teachings were passed down orally to prevent leaks. We are left reading the walls. The Mithria themselves are our primary source, and they are covered in breathtakingly complex iconography that is a puzzle without a key. The central image in every temple is the tauroctony, Mithras in his distinctive Phrygian cap, subduing and slaying a bull, often accompanied by a dog and a snake lapping at the bull's blood and a scorpion attacking its genitals. For decades, scholars have debated the meaning of this scene, which has no parallel in known Persian mythology. The most fascinating theory, proposed by modern scholars like David Ulansey, suggests it is not a literal story but an astronomical code. Every element in the scene, the bull, the dog, the snake, the scorpion, the raven, could correspond to constellations in the night sky: Taurus, Canis Minor, Hydra, Scorpio, and Corvus. The image might represent Mithras as a powerful new god presiding over a cosmic shift, the precession of the equinoxes, moving the world out of the age of Taurus. This would transform the cult from a simple religion into a sophisticated philosophical system for understanding the universe, a secret astronomy for the initiated. This astrological reading, however, makes the Persian connection even more perplexing. Did this complex celestial symbolism develop in Persia and get lost there, or was it a later Roman innovation grafted onto a Persian name? The lack of any Persian artwork depicting a bull-slaying Mithra only deepens the divide, and this is the ultimate frustration, the stunning silence from the Persian side. If this god was so important to a massive Roman cult, why don't we find more evidence of elaborate Mithraic worship in Persia itself? The Zoroastrian texts that survived, like the Avesta, do mention Mithra, but he remains a supporting character, a divine witness, not a central cosmic hero. There are no discovered Mithria in Iran, no frescoes of tauroctonies, no inscriptions detailing a secretive Persian cult with 7 grades of initiation. It is as if the Romans took a single ingredient from a Persian spiritual stew and used it to cook an entirely different, magnificent meal. The possibility exists that the Persian elements in the Roman cult were largely decorative, a borrowing of exotic names and a vague Eastern mystique to add authority, an allure to what was essentially a new belief system created for and by the Roman legionary. The Mithraic mysteries stand as a haunting reminder of how ideas can travel and transform across cultures, often leaving their point of origin behind. We are left to wonder if the cult's greatest secret was that its Persian soul was not a matter of deep theology, but a powerful brand, a name that evoked ancient wisdom and unbreakable oaths, giving a Roman invention the timeless legitimacy it craved. Surrounding the King of Kings at every public appearance was a living fortress, an impenetrable shield of elite warriors whose very presence commanded absolute silence. These were the Persian Immortals, his personal guard, tasked with a responsibility where a single shouted command or a moment of hesitation could mean catastrophe. In the bustling court, during tense diplomatic receptions, or amidst the chaos of a military campaign, they moved with a silent, terrifying synchronicity, anticipating threats and reacting as a single entity without ever seeming to communicate. This flawless, wordless coordination is one of the most intriguing logistical puzzles of the ancient world. How did 10,000 men protect the most valuable person on earth without uttering a single word that could betray their intentions or disrupt a sacred ceremony? The methods they must have used were so effective and so secretive that they have vanished from the historical record, leaving us to reconstruct a system of silent signals from mere fragments of evidence. The necessity for such silence was deeply rooted in Persian court protocol. The ruler was not just a political leader, he was a semi-divine figure, the center of a complex religious and political universe. The atmosphere around him was meant to be one of awe-inspiring order and tranquility. A guard barking orders or yelling warnings would have shattered this carefully constructed illusion of divine calm, potentially causing panic or appearing weak in front of foreign ambassadors. Furthermore, in situations where stealth was paramount on a night march during a covert repositioning of troops, or while securing a wooded Ariane auditory signal could reveal their position and intentions to an enemy. Their ability to operate in utter silence made them not just bodyguards but ghosts, an invisible barrier that could materialize and neutralize a threat before most people even realized one existed. So what was their secret language? Without any surviving manual, we must look to universal principles of military communication and make educated deductions. The most likely system involved an intricate combination of hand and weapon signals. A slight shift in the grip on a spear could communicate a change in formation. The deliberate placement of a hand on a belt or the hilt of a dagger could indicate a specific individual in the crowd requiring closer surveillance. The angle of a bow slung over a shoulder might signal a change in the guard's rotation. These gestures would have been minute, designed to be seen only by the trained eye of another immortal, indistinguishable from idle fidgeting or the natural movement of a soldier standing at attention. They would have practiced these signals until they became second nature, a reflex as automatic as breathing, allowing complex tactical information to flow through the ranks without a sound. Beyond hand signals, the use of environmental sounds is another compelling theory. The Persians were masters of falconry and employed birds in hunting. It is not a great leap to imagine they trained them for communication. A specific bird call, mimed perfectly by a guard posted on the periphery, could carry a pre-arranged warning across a noisy courtyard without raising suspicion. The sharp cry of a hawk or the coo of a dove would blend seamlessly into the natural soundscape, a secret message hidden in plain hearing. Even the tapping of a spear butt on a specific type of stone paving could create a faint, rhythmic code audible only to those who knew to listen for it. The most effective signals would be those that were completely deniable, sounds that an outsider would dismiss as irrelevant nature or random noise. The ultimate evidence for this sophisticated system lies in its undeniable success. Historical accounts, though written by their Greek adversaries, consistently describe the Persian guard as terrifyingly efficient and preternaturally aware. They didn't just react to threats, they seemed to anticipate them, flowing to fill gaps in security before those gaps could be exploited. This suggests a communication system that was not merely reactive but proactively predictive. A guard noticing a nervous individual in the crowd wouldn't need to shout. He could simply make eye contact with his commander and execute a subtle signal, triggering a silent ripple effect that would see two other guards seamlessly shift their positions to create a human wall between that individual and the king. The complete absence of any successful recorded assassination attempt on a Persian king in the heart of his own court is the strongest testament to the efficacy of their silent language. It was a system so perfect that it rendered itself invisible, leaving no trace for historians to find except for its magnificent, enduring result, the absolute safety of the King of Kings. High above the desert plains, far from the noise of the court and the march of armies, the Persian magi turned their gaze to the heavens. These priest astronomers were far more than keepers of the sacred flame. They were the empire's scientists, timekeepers, and navigators, possessing an understanding of the cosmos that was centuries ahead of its time. They tracked the movements of planets with astonishing accuracy, mapped constellations unknown to the Greeks, and developed a calendar so precise it needed only a single day of adjustment every 1400 years. Their observatories were likely simple, open-air towers or carefully aligned viewing platforms, but their intellectual achievements were monumental. They didn't just watch the stars, they recorded their cycles, predicted eclipses, and used the celestial clock to dictate the timing of everything from religious festivals to agricultural planting. This vast body of knowledge was the intellectual engine of the empire, a sophisticated blend of science and spirituality that saw the will of Ahura Mazda written in the movement of the heavens. Yet, following the seismic upheavals of the Islamic conquests in the 7th century, the vast majority of this astronomical wisdom simply vanished, leaving behind only tantalizing fragments and a gaping hole in the history of science. The sheer sophistication of what was lost comes into focus when we examine the few surviving artifacts. The most famous is the Zoroastrian calendar itself, a marvel of long-term thinking. While the Julian calendar used in Rome required a leap day every 4 years, the Persian system was even more refined, intercalating days in a complex cycle that resulted in near-perfect harmony with the solar year. This wasn't just for keeping track of days, it was essential for their religious duties, as many rituals were tied to specific solar events like the equinoxes and solstices. Their skill in celestial prediction is hinted at in classical sources. The Greek historian Herodotus, though often skeptical of barbarian achievements, noted that the Magi were renowned for their ability to foretell eclipses. This requires a deep understanding of the Saros cycle, the 18-year period after which the Sun, Moon, and Earth return to approximately the same relative positions, making eclipses predictable. Possessing this knowledge gave the Magi immense power and prestige, allowing them to present themselves as interpreters of the divine will through the language of the cosmos. So how does an entire scientific tradition, one so crucial to the functioning of a superpower, simply disappear? The answer is not a single cataclysm, but a slow death by 1,000 cuts, a tragic confluence of political, religious, and linguistic forces. The first and most devastating blow was the destruction of the Sasanian Persian Empire by the expanding Arab Islamic Caliphate in the mid-7th century. This wasn't just a political defeat, it was a cultural and institutional dismantling. The Sasanian state had patronized the Magi, funding their observatories and preserving their knowledge. With the fall of the empire, that entire support structure collapsed. The priestly class, which was the sole repository of this specialized knowledge, was displaced, its influence shattered and its financial backing gone. The ancient academies, like the famed one at Gundashapur, which had been a beacon of learning for centuries, went into decline, and the unbroken chain of oral and written transmission that had sustained Zoroastrian astronomy for over a millennium was finally broken. A second, more subtle force was the shift in language and scholarly focus. The administrative and intellectual language of the new Islamic Empire became Arabic. To survive and remain relevant, scholars were compelled to translate their works into Arabic or risk obscurity. While some Persian astronomical knowledge was indeed absorbed into the new Islamic scientific golden age, figures like Al-Khwarizmi built upon earlier Persian and Indian models. This process was highly selective. The new scholarly elite were primarily interested in the raw data, the star positions, the planetary models, the mathematical calculations. The intricate religious and mythological context that gave this astronomy its deeper meaning to the Zoroastrians was often stripped away, deemed irrelevant or even heretical from an Islamic perspective. The names of stars and constellations were changed, the myths behind them were forgotten, and the knowledge was repackaged into a new Islamic scientific framework. The soul of the original Persian system was lost in translation, its cultural DNA discarded even as its mathematical bones were put to new use. The most tragic loss may be the star charts and celestial maps that have never been found. Ancient texts make passing references to the Magi using detailed scrolls depicting the night sky, complete with unique Persian constellations and annotations. None of these have survived. Were they destroyed in the countless libraries burned during the conquests? Did they decay in hidden temple archives, their papyrus and parchment crumbling to dust without anyone left to copy them? Or were they deliberately destroyed by overzealous converts who saw the imagery of a rival religion as idolatrous? The answer is likely a combination of all three. The few glimpses we get are from oblique references in later texts. Medieval Arabic astronomers sometimes mention the old Persian measurements for a star's position, measurements that are often remarkably accurate, hinting at the high-quality observations that must have been recorded in those lost scrolls. Other fragments survive in the most unlikely of places, painstakingly copied in the margins of surviving Zoroastrian religious texts, known as the Avesta, where a priest perhaps tried to save a sliver of his dying scientific tradition by tucking it inside the pages of his faith's most holy book. These marginal notes are heartbreaking in their isolation. A single star name here, a planetary equation there hinting at a vast ocean of knowledge now reduced to a few scattered drops. The disappearance of the Magi's astronomy is more than the loss of facts and figures. It is the loss of an entire way of seeing the universe. We are left to wonder what other discoveries they might have made, what complex models of planetary motion they developed, or what celestial phenomena they recorded that have since faded from view. Their knowledge represented a unique fusion of the empirical and the spiritual, a worldview where calculating the path of Jupiter was as much an act of devotion as it was of science. Its vanishing act serves as a sobering reminder that scientific progress is not inevitable, and that the light of knowledge, no matter how brilliantly it burns, can be extinguished by the winds of history, leaving later generations to squint at the faint afterglow and wonder at what once was. But beyond the silent signals of the god and the lost charts of the astronomers, the Persian court held another, more intimate layer of secrecy, one that resided in the most private realm of the king himself, his dreams. In a civilization where the boundary between the divine and the political was seamlessly blurred, the nocturnal visions of the King of Kings were not dismissed as mere fantasy. They were treated as state affairs of the highest importance. Historical accounts, particularly from Greek sources but echoed in later Persian traditions, describe several pivotal moments where a royal dream directly altered the course of history. This presents us with a fascinating psychological and political enigma. Were these dreams genuine divine messages, cunningly crafted political tools, or perhaps the ancient world's most sophisticated form of psychological operations? The fact that modern scholars still fiercely debate their true nature confirms they remain one of the empire's most intriguing unsolved secrets. The most famous and consequential of these dreams is attributed to Cyrus the Great himself, as chronicled by Herodotus. On the eve of his rebellion against his grandfather, the Median king Astyages, Cyrus is said to have dreamed that the sun was shining from his shoulders, its rays extending over all of Asia and Europe. His Magi interpreters, the masters of dreams and omens, declared this a sign that his rebellion would be successful and his reign would be glorious beyond measure. The dream served as the ultimate divine sanction, bolstering his courage and convincing his followers that their cause was favored by the heavens. But consider the context. Cyrus was about to lead a perilous uprising against a powerful and established monarch. He needed unshakable confidence and the unwavering belief of his comrades. The timing is almost too perfect. Was this a spontaneous vision from the gods, or was it a story, a powerful piece of propaganda circulated by Cyrus and his inner circle to legitimize his claim and present his ambition as destiny? In an age where political power was deeply intertwined with perceived divine favor, fabricating a favorable dream was a masterstroke, a way to weaponize faith and ensure loyalty at a moment of extreme vulnerability. This theory of dreams as political tools gains even more traction in the story of Darius the Great's rise to power. Following the chaotic period after Cambyses' death and the overthrow of the impostor Gomata, Darius faced the monumental task of securing a throne to which his bloodline claim was arguably weak. The Behistun inscription, his own monumental piece of propaganda, claims his ascent was the will of the god Ahura Mazda. but other accounts suggest dreams played a crucial role in consolidating his support among the 7 noble conspirators who helped him seize power. It is said that shortly before their coup, one of the key nobles, a man named Intafrens, had a powerful dream predicting Darius's kingship. The dissemination of this story among the other conspirators would have been a brilliant psychological operation, a way to align their mindsets and reinforce their resolve by making their risky endeavor feel preordained. By framing his ascension as the subject of divine dreams, Darius wasn't just claiming power, he was programming the beliefs of his most important allies, ensuring their loyalty was rooted in a shared, mystical experience rather than mere political calculation. Yet, to dismiss all royal dreams as mere fiction is to ignore the profound cultural and religious context of ancient Persia. For the Zoroastrian Magi, dreams were not random neural firings. They were a legitimate channel of communication from the divine realm, a way for Ahura Mazda to guide his chosen representative on earth. The Magi were trained in oneiromancy, the intricate art of dream interpretation, and they likely employed a complex system of symbolism. A dream of a soaring eagle might signal impending military victory, while a vision of a withering tree could be a dire warning of famine or plague. The king, burdened with the immense responsibility of governing a vast empire, may have genuinely believed in the prophetic nature of his dreams. The immense psychological pressure of his role could easily have manifested in powerful, vivid nightmares and visions that his advisors then interpreted within their religious framework. In this light, a dream was not a cold political tool, but a deeply personal experience that was then leveraged for public consumption, a fusion of sincere belief and strategic necessity. The true mystery, and the reason modern scholars cannot reach a consensus, is that these ancient accounts offer no way to distinguish between a genuine psychological event, a conscious fabrication, and a story embellished over generations of telling. We are left with a tantalizing puzzle that sits at the intersection of faith, politics, and psychology. The dreams of the Persian kings were more than just curious anecdotes. They were active forces that shaped history, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon in an emperor's arsenal wasn't an army of immortals but a story about a dream. Carved into the dramatic cliff face of Naksh-e-Rustam, standing as eternal sentinels against the Iranian sky, are the magnificent cross-shaped tombs of 4 mighty Persian kings. This is the Valley of the Kings for the Achaemenid Empire, the final resting place of Darius the Great, Xerxes, Artaxerxes, and Darius II. But while the towering facades command all attention, drawing the eyes upward, the greatest mysteries of this sacred site are hidden in the opposite direction, down in the earth beneath your feet. Scattered around the base of the cliff, often obscured by dust and debris, are the openings to a network of mysterious man-made tunnels and chambers, their true purpose and full extent remaining one of Persia's most tantalizing physical puzzles. These are not natural caves. Their squared-off, finished walls and precise angles scream of deliberate, sophisticated construction, a hidden underground layer to a necropolis designed for public grandeur. The existence of these subterranean spaces has been known for centuries, but they have never been fully mapped or comprehensively excavated. The most prominent entrance is a grand, rectangular tunnel mouth that plunges straight into the bedrock directly in front of the tombs. Its imposing size suggests a formal, processional function, not some secret burrow. Where does it lead? The most persistent and romantic theory is that this tunnel, and others like it, are not isolated chambers but part of a vast, secret network of underground roads. Imagine a hidden highway allowing the movement of priests, guards, and perhaps even royal funeral processions away from the public eye and the blistering sun, connecting Naksh-e-Rustam directly to the ceremonial capital of Persepolis, several kilometers away. This wouldn't be without precedent. The Romans built their famous Cryptoporticus underground passageways for similar reasons. The logistical achievement would have been staggering, a testament to Persian engineering prowess that rivaled their Qanat systems. But creating a stable, navigable tunnel through miles of rock is a very different challenge than digging an irrigation channel. A more pragmatic, though equally fascinating, theory posits that these tunnels were never meant for travel, but for storage and protection. Naqsh-e-Rustam was far more than a cemetery. It was a major religious and ceremonial complex, home to a crucial fire temple and the site of important annual rituals. These underground chambers could have served as secure warehouses for the vast amount of ritual paraphernalia required: precious vessels, ceremonial garments, stores of incense, wood, and sacred oils for the eternal flames. In times of invasion or civil unrest, they could have been used to hide the most priceless religious artifacts and perhaps even royal treasures from plunder. This would explain their proximity to the tombs and the temple, making them the empire's most sacred safe deposit box. Yet another possibility is that they were functional spaces for the Magi priests, providing cool, secluded areas for preparation, purification rituals, or the guarded oral transmission of secret knowledge away from the uninitiated. Modern technology has offered glimpses into this hidden world, but each answer only deepens the mystery. In recent years, archaeologists have managed to conduct limited surveys using ground-penetrating radar. The results were electrifying. The scans did not reveal a single tunnel leading to Persepolis, but they did confirm that the known openings connect to a much more extensive and complex labyrinth than previously imagined. A honeycomb of interconnected chambers, vertical shafts, and passages that sprawl out in multiple directions, some stretching deep underneath the cliff itself. This suggests a multi-level, multi-purpose complex, perhaps evolving over centuries with each successive king adding his own underground addition to the necropolis. The data reveals voids and anomalies that hint at sealed chambers, their contents a complete mystery. Could one of these be the long-lost treasury of Ekbatana, moved here for safekeeping? Or could they hold the original, uncarved stone tablets meant for Darius's Behistun inscription, or even the undiscovered tombs of queens and princes deemed unfit for the grand cliffside real estate? The frustrating and ultimately defining aspect of this mystery is why these tantalizing clues haven't been pursued with more vigor. The answer lies in a difficult convergence of political and ethical barriers. Naqsh-e-Rustam is an Iranian national heritage site of immense importance, and foreign archaeological teams face significant restrictions and complex bureaucratic hurdles to obtaining permits for any invasive excavation, especially the kind of large-scale digging required to properly explore these tunnels. The political tensions between Iran and Western nations have, for decades, made the kind of international scientific collaboration common in Egypt or Greece almost impossible here, stalling progress and leaving questions unanswered. Furthermore, there are profound and legitimate preservation concerns. Any excavation, particularly of unstable underground structures, carries an inherent risk of damaging the very site you're trying to study. A misplaced shovel or a poorly shored-up tunnel could trigger a collapse, not just of the hidden chambers but potentially of the ground above, risking the stability of the towering tombs themselves. The Iranian cultural authorities are rightfully cautious, prioritizing the conservation of what is visibly magnificent over the risky pursuit of what might be hidden below. The tunnels have waited for 2,500 years. They can afford to wait longer for the development of even more advanced, less invasive technologies like ground-penetrating radar or robotic probes that can navigate the narrowest passages without a single human setting foot inside. The secret tunnels of Naqsh-e-Rustam thus remain a powerful symbol of the choices we face in archaeology: the burning desire to know everything now versus the solemn responsibility to preserve and protect, ensuring that the mysteries of the past remain intact for future generations to solve with wiser minds and better tools. We all know the legendary Silk Road, that ancient network of trade routes linking the markets of China with the wealth of Rome, a highway of ideas and innovation that shaped the world. But what if the famous map we all have in our heads, the one with a single, well-defined line across Central Asia, is only half the story? What if running parallel to these public thoroughfares was a second, shadowy web of pathways known only to the Persian Empire's most trusted agents? This is the theory of the hidden Silk Roads, a system of clandestine routes designed not for silk and spice caravans, but for moving the empire's most sensitive and valuable cargo away from the eyes of rivals and bandits alike. The Persians didn't just control large sections of the Silk Road, they actively managed it with brilliant strategic foresight. Their empire functioned as the world's first great customs union, securing the main routes with garrisons and way stations to ensure the safe passage of merchants and collect taxes. But for certain shipments, maximum visibility was the last thing they wanted. Imagine a convoy carrying a revolutionary new technology, like the secret of sericulture silkworm eggs and mulberry saplings stolen from China to break their monopoly. Or consider the movement of a royal fugitive, a defecting general, or a team of engineers specializing in siege warfare. These were not commodities to be paraded through bustling market towns. Their safe and secret transit required an entirely different kind of road. This is where the concept of the hidden routes emerges from the mists of speculation. Scholars and explorers have long pieced together clues from fragmented accounts and the stubborn silence of the archaeological record. The most compelling evidence comes from the empire's own astonishing logistical capabilities. Persian royal couriers on the royal road could cross vast distances with impossible speed, and armies appeared on distant frontiers with shocking suddenness. This suggests an intimate knowledge of the landscape that went far beyond the main public highways. They would have known of hidden mountain passes, forgotten river fords, and secret oases that didn't appear on any public map. These forgotten pathways became the empire's covert arteries. But why wouldn't modern technology like satellite imagery simply reveal these lost roads? The answer lies in their very purpose. These were not paved, stone-lined highways meant to last for millennia. They were fleeting, adaptive tracks. A hidden route might be little more than a narrow path trodden by a single file of sure-footed mules across a scree-filled mountain pass. It might follow a dry riverbed for miles, its traces washed away by the next seasonal flood. In the endless dunes of the Karakum Desert, a crucial path might be nothing more than a sequence of specific star-shaped dunes used as navigational markers, knowledge that died with the guide who memorized it. These routes left no permanent mark because they were designed to be invisible, to blend back into the landscape after use. Satellite imagery can find a buried city, but it cannot easily find an intention, a path that was never built, only remembered. The most alluring aspect of this mystery is the cargo these roads might have carried. Beyond spies and stolen technology, they could have transported something even more volatile: ideas. The spread of religious beliefs like Zoroastrianism eastward or Buddhism westward often happened quietly, through lone missionaries and small groups moving between communities without drawing the attention of local powers. These hidden tracks could have been the conduits for heresy and new faiths. They might have carried forbidden art or seditious literature that challenged the authority of local satraps. The true power of these pathways wasn't just in moving goods, but in moving change itself underneath the radar of history and leaving barely a footprint for us to find. The silence of the desert where these roads once ran is not an empty silence. It is a silence full of whispers, of secrets that moved in the shadows of the greatest trade route the world had ever known. After Alexander the Great's army reduced the grand ceremonial capital of Persepolis to a smoldering ruin, they departed with a prize so colossal it defies modern imagination: the accumulated wealth of the Persian Empire. Historical accounts describe a train of 20,000 mules and 5,000 camels straining under the weight of this plunder, a hoard that included not just gold and silver, but exquisite furniture, priceless tapestries, and the sacred treasures of generations of kings. This wasn't merely loot, it was the physical manifestation of imperial power, the liquidated assets of the world's first superpower, all funneled into the war chest of a single ambitious Macedonian. For a time, this treasure fueled Alexander's relentless campaign of conquest, paying his soldiers, building his fleets, and founding his cities. But after his sudden death in Babylon, the vast fortune seemed to vanish from the historical record as if into thin air, leaving behind one of history's most enduring and tantalizing riddles. What was the ultimate fate of Alexander's loot? The most pragmatic and perhaps most likely explanation is that the treasure was simply spent into oblivion. Alexander's ambitions were astronomically expensive. He was fighting a continuous war across 3 continents, supporting a massive multi-ethnic army that required regular pay to maintain its loyalty. Furthermore, his vision wasn't just conquest, it was integration and foundation. He poured resources into building new cities, most famously Alexandria in Egypt, and funding grandiose projects meant to knit his new empire together. The cost of such an endeavor would have drained even the deepest of coffers. The subsequent 40 years of brutal warfare between his generals, the Diadochi, as they carved up his empire, would have consumed whatever remained. In this view, the treasure of Persepolis didn't disappear. It was converted into the wages of soldiers, the stones of cities, and the timbers of warships. Its glorious form melted down and minted into millions of common coins that circulated until they were worn smooth, its priceless artifacts lost to the relentless churn of war and economics. The fortune was the fuel for the Hellenistic age, burned away to power a historical transformation. Yet the sheer scale of the plunder makes the spent theory feel incomplete to many. Could every single ingot, every unique piece of artistry, really have been liquidated so completely that not a single substantial cache has ever been found? This doubt fuels the far more romantic possibility that a significant portion of the treasure was hidden away for safekeeping, either by Alexander himself for a future campaign he never lived to launch, or by his generals in the chaotic aftermath of his death. The geography of his campaign route is a treasure hunter's map of potential hiding spots. Could a portion have been secreted away in the remote, fortified cities of Bactria or Sogdiana, regions that were notoriously difficult to control? Perhaps it was buried in the vast, trackless deserts of Central Asia or hidden in a cave network along the rugged coastline of the Gedrosian Desert, where Alexander's army suffered horrendous losses during a brutal march. The fact that no such hoard has been discovered isn't necessarily proof it doesn't exist. It could be a testament to how well the secret was kept by those who buried it, their knowledge dying with them on some forgotten battlefield. A third dramatic theory posits a catastrophic loss. Ancient sources hint at the immense difficulties of moving such a vast quantity of precious metal. Some of the treasure was transported by ship along the coast of the Arabian Sea. Could an entire vessel or even a small fleet have foundered in a sudden storm, sending tons of gold and silver to the bottom of the Indian Ocean? The technology of the time would have made recovery from deep water impossible, leaving the wreck and its priceless cargo to be buried under centuries of silt. Alternatively, the disaster could have occurred on land. The infamous Gedrosian Desert March, where Alexander lost a third of his army to the harsh environment, could also have been the graveyard for a portion of the treasure. If a supply column became bogged down in a sandstorm or flash flood, the decision might have been made to abandon the heaviest items, including chests of bullion, leaving them to be swallowed by the shifting dunes forever. The enduring mystery is amplified by the complete lack of any archaeological evidence pointing to a definitive answer. Despite centuries of searching, from the campaigns of later Roman emperors to modern expeditions armed with satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar, no discovery has ever matched the described scale of the Persepolis haul. Smaller hoards of Greek and Persian coins have been found, but nothing that constitutes the main treasure. This absence forces us to consider the possibility that the ancient accounts, written by historians like Diodorus and Plutarch generations after the fact, may have dramatically exaggerated the amount for epic effect. The treasure of Persepolis may reside in that hazy realm between history and legend, a symbol of the unimaginable wealth and power of the East that fell to the West, its physical reality magnified 1,000-fold by the awe of those who wrote about it. Whether spent, sunk, buried, or born from a degree of myth, the lost loot of Alexander remains the ultimate ghost treasure, a glittering phantom that continues to lure historians and dreamers alike with the promise of a discovery that would rewrite the history of the ancient world. From the 50,000 soldiers swallowed by a desert storm to the ghostly whispers of a language we can no longer understand, the unresolved secrets of the Persian Empire are far more than just historical footnotes. They are vibrant, open questions that breathe life into a civilization often overshadowed by its Greek and Roman successors. Each of these 25 mysteries represents a fractured piece of a magnificent mosaic, a glimpse into a world of breathtaking engineering, sophisticated statecraft, and profound spiritual belief that we are only beginning to appreciate. The silent god signals, the lost celestial charts of the Magi, and the submerged cities in the Persian Gulf are not dead ends, they are invitations. They call out to the curious, the explorers, and the dreamers, challenging us to look closer, to question the accepted narrative, and to imagine the countless stories that were never written down. This empire's true legacy lies not just in what we know, but in the sheer volume of what we have yet to discover. The absence of evidence is not an emptiness but a space filled with potential, where every new archaeological tool and every fresh perspective can shatter our assumptions and rewrite the history books. The Persians mastered the art of preserving secrets, building their greatest treasures underground and encoding their messages in stone and symbol. Their mysteries endure because they were conceived by a culture that thought in millennia, constructing wonders and systems so robust that their questions continue to echo more than 2,000 years after their fall. To explore these puzzles is to engage in a conversation across time, to acknowledge that the past is not a static record but a dynamic, unfolding story where our understanding is always provisional, always awaiting the next great discovery. What makes this journey so compelling is that you don't need a degree in archaeology to be a part of it. History is a collective endeavor, and every new theory, every keen observation from a fresh set of eyes can be the key that unlocks a door sealed for centuries. Perhaps you have your own idea about what happened to Cambyses' army, or a theory on the true location of the Hanging Gardens. Maybe you look at the symbols on the Apadana reliefs and see a pattern everyone else has missed. The discussion is happening right now in comment sections and online forums where amateur historians and experts alike debate these incredible enigmas. So share your thoughts down below. What's the Persian mystery that captures your imagination the most? If you enjoyed this deep dive into the shadows of history, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the forgotten corners of our world. The past is waiting to be found, and the next great discovery could be just one click away.